Nick shouldn't be allowed back in. Nick burst the door down.
Yeah.
None of us are platforming him. None of us are like accepting him back in. He won. That's what fucking happened.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's just the reality. It's not like an opinion. He won. He was on Tucker because he won. He was on Candace because he won. There's this weird feeling where like people will come up to all of us all the time and be like, dude, I feel like I know you because I listen to your show. And it's some random, and then you'll be kind of like, hey, you're just some random guy who thinks he knows me. But then at the same time, I feel that same way about a whole lot of other people who I've never met that I feel like I know them. And then you're weird, like we feel like we're all connected, but we're actually further apart than any tribe in the history of the world's ever been. And that shit is, sorry guys, I took a lot of acid before this show.
Let's go, dog.
This is going to get deep. I'm just
now
kidding.
We're
None of that's true.
Cool. I'm ready, dude.
None of that's true. I had one whiskey and some nicotine. That's all I'm on.
That's fair. Well, if you want to do acid halfway through just to spice things up, that's fine too.
That's right. I'm still coming down from my 20s, so I'm not worried about it, dog.
Welcome to Ludi Lockdown. This is Clint Russell. Joe Rogan does this thing called Protect Our Parks. I'm starting up a new operation. It's called Protect Our, I don't know, it's a working title. Culture, Nation, something.
Protect our people?
Protect our people, something. We're working on it. I don't know. I dropped the link to this stream to Nick Fuentes. We'll see if he shows up, if he wants to round out the 4 horsemen of the woke right apocalypse. It should be fun.
Hold on. Is that how the show is going? That Fuentes could pop in stone cold at any time?
That's right.
No matter what we're saying?
That would be
all right.
For the record,
keep that in mind.
He has not responded to my email. I've never talked to the kid. He's probably not going to show up. But I was like, I've got Dave Smith. I've got Ian Carroll. I'm gonna try and just nuke the internet and see if I can get Nick Fuentes in here too. But anyways, yes, there you go. I'm joined by Dave Smith and Ian Carroll. Dave, how you doing, buddy?
I'm good, man. I've been looking forward to this. This will be a fun show.
Hell yeah, Ian, my guy. What's cracking?
Dude, it's great to see you again, and it's cool to finally get to talk to Dave. I'm stoked.
This is
crazy
great.
time in the world.
I got a Santa mug here. Just trying to work on the Jewish stuff. I figure I come in with the Santa mug.
Couple more
Best
sips
way to get
will
through
fix
to
it.
you guys.
I mean, we're just trying to make it to Christmas at this point, I think, in America.
Yeah, I'm getting nervous, honestly. All right, so Dave and I talk offline a lot. Ian and I do too, but I do have a question for Dave that came to mind based off of a deep dive in my own mind about the Charlie Kirk case that I've been wanting to ask Dave about. So I'm going to do that right now.
Okay.
So we're going to start there. I also want to say this is very free-flowing. Ian, please, you've done more work than I have on Charlie Kirk, so I don't want to drive this ship. If you have questions for me or for Dave, please just hop in anytime.
Hey, right back at you guys. I'm happy to have the tinfoil debunked and assessed. And
yeah, exactly. See if we can.
There's all sorts of stuff floating.
We can get you back under your skis or whatever.
I'm not I'm way out over the skis. So
okay.
All right. So based off of actually your telling of the story, Dave, you were basically saying, it just doesn't make any sense to me that you would have Josh Hammer be in this kind of coaching role for Charlie Kirk, because obviously Charlie Kirk is a much more gifted orator. He's actually much more likable. He seems to understand the history and the narrative, and he's just much more capable than Josh Hammer. So, does any of this make sense? So I started to extrapolate out, because this is what conspiracy theorists do. And I'm sure Ian probably did the same thing. And my immediate conclusion, and I actually came to this mid-recording, but I thought to myself, does Josh Hammer seem like an advisor that Charlie Kirk would have actually brought on to assist himself? Or was that a funding requirement? Was he essentially a handler? And all right, the reason, just to extrapolate a little bit further, the reason I say that is because at the penultimate event for TPUSA of this past summer, you have this opportunity to either go along with what your donors want or go along with what the audience wants, which is to have Dave Smith and Tucker Carlson and Megyn Kelly. Or you can get rid of all those people, appease your donors, and make peace with the world, right? He goes the opposite direction. He brings on all the people, and he tells Tucker Carlson, take the gloves off, say whatever you want. And then he feeds, and this is how I framed it, so tell me if you disagree. He fed Josh Hammer to you because you had already defeated Josh Hammer in that debate, and then you obviously did what you do, and you devoured him again. So my question for you, Dave, is, do you think this was Charlie Kirk standing up for himself, that he was intentionally basically spitting in the faces of his donors who had been pressuring him for the past 2 years since he questioned the false flag narrative potential about October 7th?
Well, okay, because there's a lot of questions there. So I think I've kind of like probably talked about most of these things publicly, but I don't know if I've like put all of them together. But so there's a few things there. So first of all, okay, Charlie had texted me about doing a podcast with him. It was after shortly after I did the podcast with Rogan and Douglas Murray, where we did the big debate. So shortly after that, he had texted me. I did share this text message publicly, where he had been like, I forget exactly what he said, but it was basically like, hey man, like you did a really good job on that. Like, I thought Douglas was it was stupid what he was saying here. And I actually agree with you a lot more than I disagree with you, or something like that. And then he had said, hey, why don't we do a podcast, but it could be like what that was supposed to be. Like it could be like a real respectful back and forth, like let's really talk this through and hammer out this issue together. And I was like, absolutely, I'd love to do that. And then he was like, okay, hey, it was like a lot of like thinking out loud. And then he goes, hey, well, I'm doing this, what was it called? The Student Action Summit. Hey, maybe you want to come here and I could moderate a debate, and then we could do a podcast. That was like how it originally started. It was like we were going to do a debate and then a podcast. And then, there's all just like logistical issues and traveling. And I couldn't come in till the Sunday. It was a full weekend event. So it ended up just being the debate. Now, at first, he was like, who do you want to debate? Who would be a good opponent? And I told him, I go, well, how about Dave Rubin? Because I knew he lives in Florida, and me and him had just been talking shit online. So it was like maybe him. And then both him and Patrick Bet David had both told me no answer back from David Rubin. In fact, both of them were like, did he change his number? And then,
good career saving decision, Dave Rubin.
Yeah.
So again, this is just full disclosure, and I think that I think this might actually maybe take away from the case you were laying out, but I don't know. It doesn't really disprove it. But then it was supposed to be Tim Kennedy, and I agreed to that just because I'm a UFC fan and I'm a fan of Tim Kennedy. And then also I thought that would be like a good faith, interesting kind of debate. So I was like, okay, I'm down to do that. Then for like whatever scheduling reason, he couldn't do it. And then he goes, okay, how about Josh Hammer? And if I'm being complete, the truth is I said no. I went, nah, that doesn't really interest me. Well, it was just at the time, if you could think from my perspective at the time, I was like, I just came off the Douglas Murray debate, which was the biggest show I've ever been on in my life and was like this huge thing. And I had already fucked up Josh Hammer at an Oxford-style debate at Princeton University, where it was like, it was just like, it couldn't have gone better than that. And then in my mind, I kind of felt like, well, at least what I said was, I went, this doesn't really make any sense because I already beat this guy and he's got nothing for me. So like, what is this? But
and
in
you
my
straight
mind,
up said that to him, right? Like you kind of said that in less words to Charlie, right?
I mean, look, I have the text messages. I think I said, I don't really think that makes sense because I already debated him and I already beat him. But I probably didn't say, which is also, I don't know, weirdly a part of our world sometimes. I went, well, what's the point in that? Like, I already won. That doesn't do anything for me. And you could justify it like, that doesn't do anything for the cause or whatever. But so I said no. And then Charlie came back and he goes, come on, dude. This will be so much bigger than that. This will be in front of the Turning Point audience and it'll get way more eyeballs. And then when he said that, I was like, the truth is these young right-wingers are really who I am trying to reach. So, all right, fine. And so then we worked out. So look, I'm just adding that to go. It's not like Charlie's master plan was you'll come in here and debate Josh Hammer.
It was a plan D.
I think that in a way, maybe the easier explanation here is that Charlie, like I said, Charlie's between this rock and hard place, which is much bigger than me or you or Ian. Like it's not any one of us. It's that the entire youth are turning against Israel. And his job is to be the Christian Zionist guy. And so I think he felt like he had to host the debate. Like, and maybe that was a good way to placate everyone. You got your donors here, you got your kids here. Maybe if I just moderate the debate. And so But that, again, I don't know the answer to your broader question here. But that being said, he ultimately did put on the debate versus me and Josh Hammer. And yes, it did seem like he's feeding his boy to like the wolves. And yes, to your broader question, does it make any sense at all that Charlie was going to Josh for talking points and messaging? No. I mean, come on. Like, objectively speaking, no. Charlie was much better at that than Josh Hammer is. And okay, and I'm sorry, I don't want to ramble for too much. This is the last thing I'll say and turn it over to you guys. But I think that, Candace recently said some proverb, which I won't be able to repeat, but it was like, you take the king's money, you fight the king's war type shit. Mm-hmm. And I do think that there's a dynamic where Charlie got a lot of advantages that the three of us have never gotten, like, and I don't want to speak ill of the dead. And Charlie was a really good guy to me, and I think a good person. So like, I'm not like saying anything, but he was very talented and very hardworking and all of those things, but he blew up younger in life than any of us ever did. And he got a lot of funding from this cabal
apparatus. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And there is something to be said for like, and I'm not saying that like Charlie Kirk had the right to say the right thing and break from them, but at the same time, the example I always use is like, if you guys are wrestling fans at all, the Montreal screw job, the famous story about Bret the Hitman Hart. And I just never, in all those documentaries and all the retellings of the story, I was never on Bret Hart's side. I always thought he was crazy. Like, it was like, dude, what are you out of here? He's like, I'm not going to lose the title. You're like, dude, you didn't win the title. What are you talking about, dude? It's not yours to decide whether you lose it. Like, we scripted that you won it, and now we're and look, I'm not saying it's an apples to apples, but you can understand where if billionaires are going to put you into prominence, they're also going to put the people around you who they think ought to be the people. And so what exactly was Josh Hammer's role? I don't know. He seems awfully close to Israel and then awfully close to Charlie's inner circle. And I'm not exactly buying his story that it's that Charlie was so smitten and taken by his book. I don't know. I haven't read his book, but I debated the guy twice, and he's got nothing to say about the subject.
Yeah. I mean, for example, you would have probably way rather debated Charlie than Josh Hammer, and I think we can all assume that Charlie would have given you a way more intellectual and cogent debate than Josh Hammer would have.
And
probably, right?
Probably. In a way, yes and no, but then the no side to that, yes, he was capable of it, but at the same time, the difference is that Charlie would admit when you have a point.
Exactly.
And and Josh wouldn't. Yeah. Josh would deflect. He's doing that. Charlie, the reason why I was actually really, it would never happen, but the reason why I was really into doing a conversation, not even a debate with Charlie Kirk about it, is because he was the type of guy that I almost feel like you'd be like, but I could go, but Charlie, like you get this. And he would I had a few moments like that with him off stage, and he would just kind of smile and look away but like, you just, I don't know. So like, I get your point, but at the same time, I think Charlie wasn't dishonest enough to actually do that and not admit, all right, yeah, I get your point on that. Well,
I see. I think this is kind of what I'm hinting at, is that Charlie Kirk was kind of like Bret Hart in that he was telling Vince McMahon, I'm not giving up the belt. And they're like, this is not your organization. You don't get to decide to hold the belt and to continue to go off script and say whatever you want. You have to walk away. But he's like, no, I'm not going to walk away.
For the record, I was just using that as like a way to think about it. Like, I side with Vince McMahon in that, but I side with Charlie Kirk in that. Like, But to be fair, Vince McMahon wasn't genociding anybody. Yeah. You know what I mean? He was just he was shitting on bitches, evidently. But that's a separate story, and I don't approve of that either. But it's not as bad. But yes, that's right. That's right.
Unsanitary.
And Charlie signed that deal, so to speak. He made that agreement when he was a kid. Like, he was 19 and got scooped up by Bill Montgomery, who's in his 70s. And then this whole apparatus of 501c3s and 501c4s and all these other organizations sort of spring to life around him over those next like 8 years. And show me a 19-year-old kid that understands the implications of what that agreement is going to come down the line. But I think that, I would assume, I certainly don't know, but I would assume that Charlie felt like he was at least, the major contributor to building the organization. Like, certainly I would assume that he felt like his vision should be steering the ship probably, but.
Well, look, but I mean, that's one of those things where, and I've experienced this in life before, everybody reasonably probably felt like they were responsible for building it, and like the funders and the backers also probably reasonably thought they were responsible. Because look, I mean, I don't know, and I don't know anything about him, but what's the new kid who Turning Point's trying to push?
Hollyhand, Brylan Hollyhand.
Like the
all I know is that his sign has to cost like $5,000. I'm sure that the sign he's touring with costs more than my car. So,
well, look, I don't know. I mean, look, he kind of seems like he's AI. I mean, but I'm sure he really exists. But it kind of seems like he's an AI video. But like, there is a thing about him where you're like, look, I don't think that is exactly gonna work. But you are like, yo, he is really talented, actually. Like, I saw him say a thing, and you're like, well, this is like kind of weird. It's kind of weird to have a kid spitting like this kind of perfect script at you So anyway, I guess my point is, Charlie was crazy talented. He was an unbelievably talented guy. He also had a thing that I'm not sure any of us have, or actually I'm sure none of us have, where where there's this certain talent. And by the way, Ben Shapiro had this too, where there's this thing when there's a certain talent when you're 18, you're already 50. Yeah. He's already like a 50-year-old man. He's already wearing a suit and tie, and he's already like, I just want to get up and work all day long, and all toward this. And like, Charlie was incredibly driven in a way that I think people on the outside looking in think we're all the same, but like, no, there's a real difference between what he was doing to what the rest of us were doing. So they find guys like that.
Quick interjection. Like, the only person I've ever met that reminded me of him is Vivek Ramaswamy. I went on the campaign trail with Vivek.
I've heard that from other people too.
Dude, hard charging, super brilliant, polished. You're like, are you a robot? Like, I'm not even sure you're a real person. But sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and like, no, but it's an interesting thing, because I'll be the first to say I have none of that in me at all. Like, I mean, I am like, I want to hang out with my wife and kids, and then I want to read a book before I fall asleep, and maybe talk to you two guys. And then, but that's, I don't have that, like, I'm going to conquer the world type energy. And I want stuff. I mean, I want to be successful, but I don't have that. And so they find people like that. But at the same time, there's also a lot of people like that who never do anything. But you find someone like that, and then they decide, we're going to launch you into superstardom. You could say it's really you. Sure, it is. It is you who built that. At the same time, would you have built anything like that if those guys hadn't like all aligned behind you? Probably not. Probably not. In a way, that is the most impressive thing about the Nick Fuentes phenomenon, is that you're like, oh, fuck, you like actually built this. But again, Nick hasn't built what Charlie built. What Charlie did was a different fucking thing, dude. Like, that is, it's one thing, but believe me, I have a gauge of this.
Hundreds of millions of dollars backing him, whereas you had tens of millions of dollars going against Fuentes.
Exactly.
So, that's pretty crazy.
Now, that being said, as big as Nick is now, he's not going out and selling out. Charlie was doing, how many people were at those goddamn events? These events with 50,000, 60,000 people there. I mean, this is like not, I mean, it's there's really almost nothing else in this realm, in our space, that's comparable to that.
Other than all of the mega Zionist conferences that happen every other month, right? Every other week, basically, at this point.
Well, mega churches, mega, basically, yes, all within that same realm. But or Trump campaign rallies. I mean, there's really like almost aside from that, there's really nothing that was on that level. And yes, all of that is funded by very similar sources.
But once you start to put that kind of money behind somebody, sure, they're going to think that they're a real boy. And yes, he was very talented. And yes, they don't get to where they get without Charlie Kirk. But they all know, if you get out of line, we're going to rug you. Like, we're going to rug you. And if you don't accept being rugged, then we might do something really dramatic. And I think that's the point that Ian has been making since day 2. And, got chastised by the world for doing so. But I just want to elaborate just ever so slightly on why I feel like Josh Hammer's a handler. I know I sound like a crazy person, but
I don't think you do.
Yeah, well, I know you don't, but the rest of the world might. We'll see. Josh Hammer, he has been on. He's like a repeating guest on all of the biggest shows in right-wing media. And if you look at his podcast, it has as many episodes as mine.
Wait, what shows? What shows is he a repeating guest on?
Oh, sorry, not on Joe Rogan or any of those. But I'm saying like
no. But I know I just genuinely don't know what shows is he a repeating guest on?
Because you've never seen the episodes.
I know. Right. He writes for Newsweek or whatever.
No, he goes on. He's a regular guest with Megyn Kelly. He was a regular guest with Charlie Kirk on his show. Regular guest with Glenn Beck. I think Posobiec as well. He's like basically he's in that orbit, right?
Right.
No one gives a fuck about him. Like he's literally a non-factor. Like if he were to try and sell tickets to an event, he would get none. He would get I have more of a following than he does by a lot, and that's crazy because I've never been on any of those shows. None of those shows have given me any.
Dude, did you see he was whatever his podcast that was like the response to the Tucker Fuentes episode? I saw it had like on Newsweek's official YouTube channel, and it's Josh Hammer, the guy who's involved just off. Look, Ben Shapiro had like great numbers on his latest one. The whole comment section is against him, but at least people wanted to watch. People don't even want to watch what Josh Hammer has to say.
Yeah,
like people wanted to hate watch Ben Shapiro his last episode. No one even. It is crazy that dude within this moment. It seems like he can't even like get a few thousand extra views. That's
what I'm saying.
He's just so mutable. It's like you don't even care to respond and get clicks off the responses.
But I will say just because I'll just say that to the framing aspect, I get your point with all of this, and we could go down all these down these paths. But also, I would just say that it's a little bit subjective, or from your perspective, to say who got what type of pushback. Because like if you're saying Ian got a whole bunch of pushback for saying it was Israel who did this 48 hours after this, believe me, I got a lot of pushback for saying that there's no evidence that Israel.
Yeah, exactly. I think you probably got more pushback than me.
I mean, like if we're talking about in the world of people who are watching this show and in the world of people in my comment section, it was, dude. It might have been Ben Shapiro's last episode, or Steven Crowder when he debated me in his comment section. My whole comment section turned on me for that. So just saying, I actually think in a weird way that was the more that'll get you fucking hated, at least in our neck of the woods.
Let me just finish my point, and then I want Ian to hop on this.
Sure.
Because I look at like the reviews for Josh Hammer's podcast. He's the editor-in-chief of Newsweek. He does all of the biggest hits in right-wing media. I do none of those. I don't work for Newsweek. I'm literally just a guy on Twitter with a podcast and a microphone. That's like all I do. I have more than 4 times or 5 times the reviews on Apple Podcasts. I have way more viewership, way more listenership, way more followers. It's like there is zero organic support for this guy. He's a fucking non-factor. He doesn't exist. He's just basically like, I am, because of whatever the fuck connections this guy has, he is in the orbit of all of the most powerful speakers on the right wing. And there's no audience to speak of. There's no drive. There's no demand. There's no audience that's following him around to listen to him. There is absolutely zero incentive for them to have him on. But they do. Why, Dave? Why the fuck do they have Josh Hammer on their show over and over again? You see what I'm saying? And it just strikes me as like, this guy is an op. Sorry.
I don't think he's the only one either. I think there's a number of them just like that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess that we could hammer down on it. Like, I don't disagree with any of that. I mean, but what do you mean by an op? I mean, like,
he was in a group chat and he lied about fucking Charlie Kirk. I was saying he's going to abandon the pro-Israel cause 48 hours before he caught a bullet. You know what I mean?
I was... Sure. Yes, I know. I thought that was wild. I talked about it a bunch on my show. This was that was an insane revelation that Candace brilliantly pulled out of him. But I don't know what exactly... I feel like it's almost saying with the tone that I'm arguing with you on that. I don't know what you mean by an op.
Sorry.
I think that, he was, look, what exactly the hell he's doing there and why all these people have him on. I mean, look, that's a good question. I really have absolutely no idea to that. And I think that the most probably, aside from all this stuff we're saying, because there is an essence of it that's just kind of speculation, where it's like, why would Charlie have this guy who sucks so much around him? Like, he's not even good at what he's supposed to be good at. How is he even helping? But the fact that we have that he went out and lied through his fucking teeth in the wake of the biggest like political assassination of our lifetime during an active murder investigation, that to me would at least make him a person that the police would like to have a word with. You know, I think in a way there's almost like, I don't have any type of expertise in police work or how exactly you would be a detective. But then at the same time, just keep in mind, Brandon Tatum was smart enough to be a cop. So basically anyone could do it. Anyone could. I don't mean that as an insult to law enforcement if you're listening to this. And as particularly if you're in my area, I appreciate you protecting me. But I mean, if Brandon Tatum can do that job. But look, if you think about it like this, I think I'm right more or less about this, right? But if you were like doing detective work, there's like many different layers, right? So there'd be, you might say there was like a murder in an apartment building, and then you came up and you were trying to ask people questions, and someone like opened their apartment door and then slammed the door and went away. Like that might be enough to like raise the eyebrow of a cop and go, let's go ask that person some questions. But that's not evidence. That's not anything you could bring in front. And then there's like a level where, they'd be like in the old cop shows, they'd go, will you come? We'd like to ask you some questions downtown. Now you're not arrested. We don't have any probable cause or anything. Like we can't make you come down. But we're like, hey, we'd like to ask you some questions. Then there's a level of being like a person of interest. Then there's a level of being a suspect. Then there's the prime suspect. Then we're going to get an indictment and arrest you. Then we've convicted you beyond a reasonable doubt of proof, right? So I think what happens is sometimes when people are building these theories, and I'm not saying it's not everyone's a conspiracy theorist, and lots of conspiracy theories are real. But when people are building these theories, it's almost like if you go like, well, hey, there's this thing here that would make you raise your eyebrow, or even there's this thing here that would make you go, we'd like to ask you some questions downtown. People will act like that is you were just convicted in a court of law. And it's like, hey, we're not anywhere near there.
No. So, I think just to clarify, he's a person of interest to me. Like that's where I'm at with it.
I think that's reasonable. Look, I think at least and you guys can argue with me on this. I guess where I am in this is I would go just by lying the way Josh Hammer did and being so weird. Like it's almost like the way he was promoting his book in the interviews about it, it was almost like a wife getting like a life insurance policy. Yeah. You're like, Jesus Christ, dude. That would certainly be enough for me to go, we want to ask this guy some questions. But does it make him a person of interest? Debatably. Well, I think the biggest, let me just say this and then I'll shut up for a while. I'm sorry, I've been talking a lot. But I'd say the biggest thing I heard is that there was the dude, Harrison Smith, I believe his name is, from InfoWars, who I kind of dismissed at first. But he had said the one guy said Charlie feared for his life. He feared that Israel was going to kill him if he came out against them. And then Candace, I know at one point, and I know Candace wouldn't say this. I trust that Candace wouldn't just lie and say this. She said 3 different people close to Charlie confirmed with her that Charlie was afraid that Israel was going to kill him if he came out against them. Now, I don't know who those 3 people are, and I don't have any trust in them, but I know Candace wouldn't say that unless 3 people had told her that. Like, I just know her. She was not lying about her friend like that.
Yeah. She said 2 of them had it in writing.
Right. Now, we haven't seen that.
No, we have not.
But we do know that. Okay, so we have Candace saying that, and we have the fact that his right-hand man sent the screenshot of him saying, I'm turning on Israel, to the cops, like at least was concerned enough to go like, you should look at this. So those pieces of evidence to me, and some detective could correct me if I'm wrong, I think if that's true that 3 different people said that about Charlie, that would make Israel a person of interest.
Yeah.
Well, it was actually, it was more than that.
No,
but I'm just saying that alone would make them not Absolutely. A suspect, but a person of interest where you're like, that's who we're going to be looking at now. But anything else you want?
I was just going to add
to say, but I'm going to let Ian
Blumenthal
run.
Jumped in on there too. Because Max Blumenthal in the Gray Zone also reported numerous sources corroborating that to them, and we don't really know if they're the same sources or different sources. I think it's likely there's overlap because often if a whistleblower is trying to whistleblow, they're going to get in touch with a few people maybe, but
that's true. So that's a fair point. And so I just always assumed those must have been the same 3 sources, but perhaps not.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I think it very well could be. But Blumenthal also elaborated on more reporting that about Donald Trump apparently having a little bit of fear and other things in the Trump camp around this that obviously, you have to judge those sources for yourself. And I try not to base my arguments on sources that people have to judge for themselves. Although I'll think about it, but I try to judge my arguments based on things we can kind of all corroborate in the open air. But I actually think that I would disagree with you guys. And I'm not so suspicious that Josh Hammer is like necessarily a person of interest in the murder of Charlie Kirk. Certainly.
Sorry, I didn't mean to imply that. I just meant that I think he's a person of interest in the like overall
greater kind of
Israeli
conspiracy
why is
to
he
control.
Yes, why is he actively lying about the mindset of Charlie Kirk? Why is he trying to deflect from a obvious, legitimate motive that we have evidence to know is real?
Well, it just, what it is that the thing, in a weird way, and I think this is kind of at the heart of what's been going on in the last couple of years and what's changed so much in the political dynamic. But like the clear thing that Josh Hammer did was that he was rushing with his first and foremost priority was to protect Israel, and then to promote himself. But that the thing was to go oh, it's ridiculous. It's an anti-Semitic conspiracy theory to think that Charlie Kirk was turning on Israel. Even though
with the Zionist, are you surprised, right? With the Zionist, could there be any other response?
But exactly. But the point is that in the same way as that might point toward a conspiracy, it also points against it because you go, yeah, that's how all of them are all the time anyway. Do you think you know what I mean?
But isn't that a conspiracy by nature? Isn't that the conspiracy by nature? Isn't that the most taboo anti-Semitic conspiracy in its nature? Is that unfortunately Zionists are inherently incentivized to protect Israel at all costs. And we all bear the brunt of that. When you say, and I mean, Brett Cooper is currently bearing the brunt of that. She says one thing that's totally reasonable about Randy Fine and, a couple of assholes. And suddenly all of these conservatives are trying to pretend like she's not a total sweetheart, that it was beloved yesterday.
First off, right? I saw that. That was cool. And can I tell you, I don't know anything, which I'm not supposed to. I don't know anything about that chick other than I know she was the girl who everyone said looked like she was related to Ben Shapiro, who was on Daily Wire for a while. That's all I know. And all I know is that I saw a clip of her. I don't know if you remember this, Clint, but there was one time a few years ago where she just gave Ron Paul a ton of love in some clip. And then that went viral in our circles because we're libertarian Ron Paulians. And I was like, yo, that's fucking awesome. The chick, because Ben Shapiro, the reason I've hated him for 15 years and I will never stop hating him is because the way he went after Ron Paul. And so I was like, oh, it's so awesome that his daughter is on his airwaves saying how awesome Ron Paul is. But I never thought much of it. And then one time I was having lunch with Candace Owens, and she started bringing her up. And she was like, oh, she's about to leave the Daily Wire. And, when Candace gives you gossip, you're like, I don't know if that's really true or not. But this one turned out to be true. And she goes, she's awesome. I swear, she's really solid. And so after that, I was just like, oh, I think she's cool. But I never knew it. But that was awesome what she said. I thought it was perfect. And it was a perfect, totally reasonable point. And to what you're saying, Ian, the thing about that being the most anti-Semitic conspiracy theory of all is well, yeah, according to those fucking liars, that's what they would tell you is the most anti. But of course, in reality, that's fucking just obvious. The idea that the idea that Ben Shapiro or fucking Ted Cruz or any of these motherfuckers have loyalty to Israel is they fucking say it in their own words. And then if you turn around and say it, that's oh, what now you're anti-Semitic or something. So the whole point is that obviously all these guys, does anyone, any of them, dude, but it's not even a Jewish thing. It's partially a Jewish thing, but it's if Ben Shapiro or Ted Cruz or Lindsey Graham or Randy Fine or Brandon Tatum, for that matter, if their wife on their deathbed said, I've been thinking about it, and I think the way Israel's treating the Palestinians is just wrong, and then died, and then a camera asked them, what did your wife say on her deathbed? They'd go, she said Israel was the greatest country ever, because they will just protect them at all costs. And it's very bizarre.
But that's literally what happened with Charlie. But this is not him dying of natural causes of old age. This is him getting shot with a high-powered rifle. You know, like, this is a big fucking deal, David. Sorry, I know I sound like I'm yelling at you, but I'm not yelling at you. I'm just like, I'm genuinely freaked the fuck out that I saw a guy that I kind of knew a little bit, that's in, like, basically a colleague of ours in this world, get clapped for fucking no reason, and he seems to be a really good guy and a family man, and no one gives a fuck. Posobiec doesn't care. Nobody fucking cares. It's like, why do I care more than all of his friends? This is crazy.
Yeah, and then Posobiec just then goes on. So, like, you're going to contaminate the crimes. You're going to contaminate the trial if you suggest anything, if you ask any questions, if you presume anything, like, as in, you know, innocent until proven guilty. This is America. Yeah, that's true. So Posobiec proceeds to go on to X and basically daily post, I saw a leftist shoot and kill Charlie Kirk, right? And I saw the left cheer. And just over and over and over that exact same sentence. It's like, dude, did you ever leave the intelligence agency that you used to work for?
Straight
because
MK
this
Ultra.
is weird, dude. And there's so many other establishment figures like him that were supposed to be Charlie's best friend, not to mention all of the TPUSA insiders that have openly lied multiple times throughout this case and said things that are physically impossible.
They just left Candace Owens in the wind. She's like, Charlie was saying he was abandoning the pro-Israel cause, and they all just go, lying bitch, crazy bitch, and you're like, what? And then it comes out of this.
Well,
true,
they openly
just
lied about
moves on. It's unbelievable.
Like, for example, board member goes on to PBD and says, no, Candace has nothing to do with the company, and she hasn't been there for years and years and years. And it's like, not only was she there like this year, but Charlie was saying he was going to invite her back.
Well, I know this from in the last year, just hanging out with Candace and hanging out with Charlie, and both of them came up when I was hanging out with both of them because, you know, of course, we talk about all this shit when we're together, and both of them spoke about each other with the utmost, like, just love and admiration.
Yeah,
like every time I more so, you know, it's weird now after someone's, you know, been killed like that. But like, I was more, when I was talking to Candace, I was like, what the fuck's up with Charlie? You know, like, I was like, what is up with it? You know, and this is before, when I was talking to Candace about this was before I kind of like became friends with Charlie. But I was like, you know, what's up? And she's like, he's the greatest guy ever. And she had never had a bad thing to say about him. She loved him. And that's real. And I think it's something you could see in Candace's coverage of this, is that she's like, and it's part of the reason why she's had such high ratings. This isn't to take away from like the quality of her show or anything like that, but there is something just really compelling about, like, you're watching. First off, Candace Owens is like, you know, you guys all know it's Candace. She's a fucking pit bull who's just fearless. You know, she gets a hold of something. She's like, I don't give a fuck what you call me. I'm going to shake this thing till I find something out of here. And like, you know, I think probably every now and then she latches onto things where there's nothing to shake out of there. But then every now and then she latches onto things and you're like, oh, you shook a few fucking solid pieces out of that thing. But the thing that's been crazy about her coverage of Charlie is that you could tell she's also like in deep grief, like a real, like, I just lost my fucking brother, you know, type of grief. And he spoke the same way about her. So Eric on Patrick Bet David, who's like, oh, she wasn't, that's bullshit, dude. Yeah, Charlie loved her. She wasn't out of his inner circle at all. I can tell you that for sure. And in terms of being rattled, believe me, I think I'm quite rattled by this whole situation. I mean, again, on top of the whole other thing, I got to know Charlie this year. It's
of course,
very fucking weird.
You were just with him 2 months ago, and the debate that you had.
Me being there is part of the reason why he was killed.
Of course,
so it's like a very weird feeling.
This is why I'm trying to. This is why I'm trying to clarify.
But if we're building a fucking case, look, if we're actually building a case to build a theory, like you were saying, Ian, right? And there's always been. And I said this, look, I know I criticized you, and I didn't mean to like go out of my way to like pile on you.
Totally
but
legit.
I did go like, hey, dude, like, we can't just say Israel did this after. But when I've given you, and I have given you a lot of credit and given you props on my show before, one of my favorite things about you was always that I loved that you didn't have the fake certainty that Alex Jones always had. And I like Alex.
I have the documents. He's
been very cool to me. But it was always, Alex always presented everything as if it was a certainty when he was right or when he was completely wrong. Like, I mean, just so many. Whereas Ian would always, like, and you know, you would always have these things where it would be like, now listen, there's this declassified document. Isn't that interesting? Now, we don't know exactly what this means, but like, look, I mean, that's pretty fun. And I always thought that was a better way to do it. And so, like, if we're building a case here, we can't just go, hey, this is weird and this is weird. We got to go, okay, let's really look. Clearly, there's one element to this that's just undeniable. Charlie was going through a profound thing over this Israel question. Look, everyone is going through a profound thing over this. I just had a post on Twitter today about, and people are giving me a lot of shit about this, but isn't it crazy? Donald Trump came in with the greatest opportunity in the history of the world a year ago. And right now, there's a fucking communist mayor in New York City. The Democrats have had a good night. The Republicans are having a civil war. And it's all over the goddamn Israel issue. It's like the whole thing. And so obviously, Charlie Kirk was also in the middle of that battle. But the fact that he was in the middle of that battle and the fact that all the fucking handlers who had been placed around him all lied through their fucking teeth, and the fact that Netanyahu tried to use it and all of that, none of that actually proves anything about what happened. It's just
it doesn't prove it. But man, is it fucking weird.
But let's rewind to the beginning. Let's rewind to the beginning.
Yeah, that's right.
The controversial tweet, because your criticism was totally not taken harshly, and I love it when people that are respectable, that are thoughtful, criticize, because that's how you have good conversation instead of having like fucking shills criticizing, because then you can't actually have a conversation there.
Sure.
And so my thinking, like when I post this very controversial tweet the day after, if I remember the wording correctly, is that I'd kind of watched the day before and I had actually purposely stayed out of it for one day, which, took some doing, because I am young and rash. And on that first day, obviously the internet was going crazy, and the internet was already speculating wildly about Israel. And I was watching that happen. And in the morning when I woke up, my first thought here is that, and I'd be curious what your opinion is on this, both of you, is that when I look at a high level political assassination, kind of at the caliber of a JFK, maybe a little below, but certainly not a lot of comparable assassinations, in my mind, the chances of that being a lone nut versus an intelligence agency, it is already more likely that it's an intelligence agency without knowing anything else about it. Just because of like how many times has a lone nut actually shot a high level political person and gotten away with it? Because every single one that I know of in history was told that it was a lone nut, but it's like pretty well understood that almost every single one was.
This is nearly a 3-hour interview with Dave Smith and Ian Carroll. And hi, I'm Clint Russell. I'm the other guy. Look, I'm not putting any ads in here. That's how much I appreciate you guys' time. I'm going to keep this really short. If you want to support the show, fucking like, subscribe, comment. And if you really love it, obviously share it around. But even more importantly, you can drop a super chat down below, or you can go to @LibertyLockPod on X. You can subscribe there. I'll follow you back. You can go to libertylockdown.locals.com. I'm going to keep this really short. That's it. That's all I got to say. Oh, and if you want to just get cozy, go to mypillow.com, use promo code LOCKDOWN. Let's get back into the show. That's exactly the point I was just going to make. It's the narrative is always lone nut, and then the conclusion is almost always not lone nut, and it's intelligence agency. So I think that's the reason I didn't have so much of a problem with your tweet. I just would have been like, I would have put it looks likely.
What I should have said was, if so, then Israel just shot themselves. But I was feeling spicy, and part of that was intentional, because I knew that all of you guys that were closer to the matter needed to and were right to be more careful about your words and to think very thoughtfully about how you interacted. And I knew that Tucker, for example, wasn't going to come out firing, but like, I knew that we were going to get mad Israeli propaganda. I knew that we were going to just be inundated with Israeli propaganda. And at a certain point, like, I am always willing to get into the mud and fight in the mud and just like, get in it. And so I was like, I'm perfectly okay with posting something that's a little more bombastic, because we are about to enter the craziest mudslinging festival that we have ever seen. And I certainly didn't want the conversation about maybe it's Israel to die on the vine while they produce the narrative that we're obviously about to receive. So that was my thinking at the time.
Okay, so I can look, I can understand all that, and look, there's been many times that I've gotten a little out over my skis or said something a little, so I'm not like holding that against you. And I would think that, and I would like to think, at least in my case, and I think in your case too, that usually even if we get a little out over our skis, we're at least pointing, in the right direction. And so right. And so first of all, I would just say, Clint, to your point, I get what you're saying, dude, but like we can't get emotional about this and start thinking like women here. So I get like if you just go, oh, isn't that weird that all this was going on and then he got killed? It's like, nah, dude, that's not.
Hold on,
again,
hold on, Dave. Let me.
Yeah.
This is what I've been trying to give.
Well, hold on, but I want to hit both of these points. But okay, go ahead.
No, I just want to say the whole reason I've been trying to give Ian the floor is because I followed this. I followed this closer than you have, Dave. Like there are a lot of things that aren't just weird, but like there's so many there's so many bullet points here, and no pun intended, that once you look at them, you don't come away just saying this is weird. You come away going, this is probable. Like that's really where I'm at with it. I'm not saying it's guaranteed. I'm just saying it's like.
No, okay, but I'm just responding to what you had said before to go like, oh, but okay, so obviously he had these handlers around him, and then they're gonna react in this way when he dies, and then you go like, okay, but dude, come on. I'm just saying, if I went out and got shot in the head tomorrow, like if I just went and got in a bar fight and got killed tomorrow, it'd be very easy to go, really, dude? After all these public debates about Israel, then he happens to get shot in the head. So I'm just saying that argument is just not an argument. That's just
when I'm driving, I think about that all the time, dude. I'm always like, if I get in a car crash right now, on
everyone's going to be convinced.
Like there will be the craziest conspiracy.
Dude,
theory.
Who was the one? Was it MGT I'm sorry, Marjorie
MTG,
Taylor Greene, MTG, who said, or maybe it was someone else who goes, if I die, Israel did it. And you're like, yeah, but how do you even know that? Because wouldn't there be a point where like, if just some random person is killing you, you'd be like, fuck, I shouldn't have said that. Yeah. All right, well, no, it turns out it's just, so anyway, I'm just saying, all I'm saying is like, again, I'm not saying you have no case here. I'm just saying, I want to make sure we remove the stuff that isn't real evidence. Like I remember there was this guy, who, I really just stopped responding to him. Ian, you may know who this is because he I think
Jason
runs
Goodman?
No,
okay,
but he made this he made a documentary about how Israel killed JFK and did 9/11. And he was like, dude, you have to watch this documentary. It's going to blow your mind, Dave. I know you're not convinced of these two things, but it's going to fucking convince you. You got to look at this. And I watched the documentary and I got through literally the first 3 minutes of it. And the first 3 minutes were a thing where he goes into this whole thing about during 9/11, they have that interview, which you guys may have seen, with the Israeli chick. And she's on the ground and she's like smiling. And he's like, what is she smiling about? Blah, blah, blah. And it just made me turn the thing off. Because I just went, dude, this should be cut out of your documentary. I know this isn't evidence. We have to think like grown-ups here. Like this. So again, I'm not saying there isn't any evidence. I'm just saying when you start with, and then that same guy, this is all I remember about him, is after Trump got shot in the ear, he was like, Trump never got shot. It was Israel, and there was no bullet, and there was this. And I'm just like, dude,
I'm curious who you're talking about. I'm not sure.
And just to clarify, I'm not a no-planer.
Ian's point, if you want to say, would you go, hey, high-level political assassinations,
right?
Do they almost always end up being more than what they seem to be? Does there always end up at least being unanswered questions that really point in the direction of there are unanswered questions? You know, like I don't know what was ever proved about Hinckley shooting Reagan, but I do know that he had what's his name, Bush's brother's like name in his address book, and that he had like all this, and that's enough to make you go like, I think there was some more to that. So if you want to go, hey, like to that point, there is a more than 50% chance that like there is something more to this. That I would go, yeah. Well, probably. And then, I mean, it does seem like that.
JFK, RFK, MLK, Fred Hampton, like all of these major political figures. And you got to keep in mind too, this is all pre-internet, dude. Like they could get away with fucking anything. Like it was so easy. Yeah. Think about how easy it is today. Because they just deluge you with like propaganda and shit, they could still get away with crazy stuff. They got away with releasing a bioweapon on the planet that was man-made, and no one even gives a fuck. We've all moved on. It was the largest transfer of wealth in human history. No one gives a fuck. It's like it didn't even happen. My whole show's named after it. No one cares. It's fucking crazy. and we have the internet, right? We have the internet. I'm just saying,
but it's not exactly like it didn't happen, man. Like that's part of the reason why we're all like getting the traction we're getting.
That's true.
You know,
that's true. But sorry, just the only point I'm making is that like almost all of those high-profile political assassinations were the government. I think it was almost always domestic intel.
Well, were all of them the government? I mean, probably a lot of them were. And then probably a lot of them were.
I think the government is kind of a misnomer in that case, though.
Yeah.
It's really
deep state
is a better generalization, but even that is kind of a misnomer,
even that's
right?
a generalization. And then like them doing it versus them letting it happen is an important distinction,
But hold on. I think that the clarifying point there is that if you can kill somebody and get away with it, like the president of the United States, you are the fucking government. Like you're the real government. You're like all the other bells and whistles and shit, the FBI, the CIA, like the president of the United States, the Congress, none of y'all are the government. If you can murder people in front of the world and get away with it, you govern this bitch. Like that's the real power.
Well, isn't that the ultimate libertarian insight? Like the real fucking libertarian insight, right? That like, it's just, there's really call it whatever the fuck you want to call it, but whoever is enforcing their will on someone else is essentially the government in that fucking instance. So yeah, that's
Monopoly on violence.
And look, I think we should all be open to the possibility too that like even within, like even to like the point that you were just like getting at, Ian, where you go like even the deep state isn't quite enough, right? Because you all know there are people who work for the CIA who would swear and pass a fucking polygraph test that they'd be like, none of these conspiracies are fucking true. Like the CIA doesn't do that. But that's just because you don't know about any of that shit. Like you're just not in that fucking department
or in the club
group, which in fact, to the best of my ability, if my because like I said, we're all conspiracy theorists. So if my conspiracy conception of the world is correct, to the best of my understanding, I think it's all at this point fucking subgroups that have long almost been disconnected from actually the CIA and the Mossad. Like essentially they all started contracting their shit out to like smaller and smaller groups that almost operate above those organizations with the weight of them, but completely separate from those organizations. And so it gets complicated, but at the same point, I would just say, keep in mind that it could be completely possible. I'm not saying any of this is true, but just to like for the thought experiment of it, it could be completely possible that Josh Hammer is the worst of what you all think he is, and he still had no idea what the real fucking plan is or what the real conspiracy is. Like he's just put in his position to play his role, and then really, I don't really.
You kidding me, dog?
A
mastermind?
No, like, he's not. You
don't
read
give
in.
that motherfucker the plan.
Yeah, no, I've never implied he's read in.
And then I also think with a lot of these things, it's kind of hard to tell. And I know there was a big one of the things that. Well, one of the things when Nick Fuentes was coming at me earlier in the year, before me and him, we're under a temporary ceasefire right now. But before that, it's holding on by a thread.
Israel and Hamas.
It's doing better than the actual ceasefire.
It is doing better. No one's been killed on either side, so it is doing better than that. No, but one of the things there was a clip that about where I was saying. And I probably didn't say this in the right way, but I was saying the thing where I was like, look, like Israel in a lot of ways is the satellite of the U.S. empire. And that probably wasn't the right way to put it. And obviously, I think I've talked a lot over the years about how much influence Israel exerts on our government. But these things are also kind of hard to parse out. And I think it was Clint, you might know this, but I think it was Sobrin's quote who said the best way to understand the neoconservatives is the Israel lobby's marriage with the military-industrial complex. And like really that was almost like the whole key to this whole thing was that the fucking this core component of the Israel lobby married itself to the military-industrial complex and actually got the whole goddamn thing on their side. And that was like a huge change. Like that is how the neoconservatives got the pull that they got. Because those guys,
wrong, Dave. I think you're wrong.
Okay.
Bankers.
Well, in what way?
Bankers are in charge of both of them. They all answer to the bankers. Like the military industrial complex works for the banks. They do the dirty work of the banks, and they're making money for the banks. Like the Israel lobby, they're not as directly affiliated because they're not exactly a corporation, but like try to tell me that they have more power than the bankers. Right?
No, it's not. It's not exactly that. So I think like the banks, the bankers almost preceded the military-industrial complex. It was a creation of theirs. It was their creation, right?
Yep.
And
so, background World War I industrialization.
Right, exactly, right? So you have the Federal Reserve comes in a few years later. We're in World War I. Then we're in World War II.
They profit off of both sides. And they're like, this is going real 100%. Good. Yep.
But if you look at, say, like in the post World War II, there's essentially what Alex Jones was telling you the conspiracy was up until 2015, but hadn't been for quite a while actually, was that the Council on Foreign Relations and the World Trade Organization and the
World Economic Forum and
it was before
that's
the
Trilateral
Commission. I'm sorry, it was the Trilateral Commission, the Bilderberg Group, and the Council on Foreign Relations, and that was true for a while. But those were that was like the Rockefellers and the Morgans and the oil men and the steel men and the bankers. And the neoconservatives, if you look at the first group, they weren't the elitists like that. They weren't at Harvard and Yale. They were at City College. That's where they were all. They were like at the New York fucking City College because they were Jewish kids from Brooklyn. They couldn't afford any of that shit. But what they did was, because it was all WASPy in the Council on Foreign Relations, and they wanted to get their own. If you look at all of it, all their shit, it's like every goddamn Bill Kristol or all their think tanks, all the Project for a New American Century, and they all were funded by weapons companies. Like, they went and made their own relationships with the military industrial complex, started their own thing, and they kind of took over. Now, obviously, they linked up with other, they were pushing in the direction the system wanted to go. And so bankers got on board, and like all the old guard kind of got on board. But those guys made their own thing that was separate from kind of like the ruling apparatus.
But if you read Whitney Webb's book, One Nation Under Blackmail, and I know you reference this all the time.
Fine. I'm down to do your show, but I'm not going to start reading women. We can talk.
Johnny Venmore wrote part of it.
I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
Just
joking, Whitney.
Yeah, that book's crazy. But the point I'm getting to is that, like, what she lays out is the history of, both the mob and the mafia, and how they do that over and over and over again in different communities, different cultures. Yeah. And they basically recognize both a market demand and also the incentive structure of the government. And then they basically find like a gray or a black market way to get in there. And then they use the incentive structure of the government to reinforce and re-entrench their own position of power. It's just that the Israelis, the Zionists, do it better than fucking anybody I've ever seen in my life. Like they fucking came up with the plan almost. It's crazy.
That's it, right, dude? But even that is like, there's different Zionist gangs, dude. Like the fucking different Zionist gang. Dude, Yitzhak Rabin, Yitzhak Rabin is not exactly the peacenik that everyone makes him out to be, by the way. But you know what I mean? Like, he was a pretty fucking bad guy too, because it's all gangster shit. But he was the one who was at least like, for fucking strategic reasons, we got to stop doing this to the Palestinians and kind of move away from this, because otherwise this is going to all go so bad for us too. Like, Yitzhak Rabin's wife to this day blames Netanyahu for his death. Like, because if you think any of the talk, even what fucking Mark Levin is saying about Nick Fuentes right now, is not as bad as what Benjamin Netanyahu did to Yitzhak Rabin. Dude, they were doing, imagine, literally, how Mark Levin's talking about Nick Fuentes right now? And he's going, little Nazi Nick, little Adolf Nick, someone ought to stop you. You want to come see me? And it was the weirdest thing ever. You're 80, you fucking weird. And also, what are you trying to out Fuentes, Nick Fuentes? It's just so crazy. Weird. Like, what do you do? Like, anyway, but you know what Benjamin Netanyahu did? They led marches holding caskets that said Yitzhak Rabin on the side of them. They fucking were like, they did these crazy over the top. And then a Netanyahu fan fucking murdered Yitzhak Rabin, right? So anyway, I'm just making the point that even within all these fucking gangs, there's different gangs that rise up. It's all just gangster shit. That's what all of it is. My point is that the neoconservatives, they were their own fucking gang that was almost like an offshoot, the way Hamas is an offshoot of the Muslim Brotherhood. they were an offshoot of the Likud party. They were like the American vanguard of the Israel lobby Likud party. And then they got way in with the military industrial complex. And they ended up but the point is that there were other Zionist gangs who fucking thought the neocons were out of their fucking minds. Who were like, yo, dude, don't let them. What are you talking about, dude? You're gonna let Paul Wolfowitz decide shit? Like there were like, and then there were like, there were other, there were other groups of just like hawkish Americans who were like, hey, I kind of like this because we could get these wars going, but then let's get some other wars going. And like, anyway, I guess my point is just that there's all different groups of those. Neocons particularly found their lane and took over.
Yeah, no, I've never viewed this stuff as like a monolithic evil entity. It's obviously, it's very complicated, but I also do recognize like the outcome of it has been that my country has been fucked up by these people, like that's just the truth. And I think that, this is why, I did an episode that went crazy viral over the past week, breaking down essentially why I think Nick Fuentes is such a phenom. And I think that he, in a weird way, he really reflects the anger that I have, philosophically, he and I differ tremendously, but we align very similarly on how furious we are at the trajectory of our country, at the leadership of our country, the government of our country, the politicians of our country, but also the media, the entire environment. It's fucking disgusting. And nobody's actually standing. And it's weird because like, this is the void that Ben Shapiro briefly filled, kind of a role model for young men, but never really. And then Jordan Peterson came in and really became that for a while. And then he got fucking strung out and started to tell people to take vaccines and lost his fucking mind. And I still love Jordan Peterson. I'm not talking shit, but let's be honest, he fucking ate ass over the past couple of years. And then, you got the Tate brothers, particularly Andrew, who fills that void. And it's just like, all we're seeing over and over and over again is this incredible market demand for young men to have a leader. And it's like, all right, here's your next one, Nick Fuentes. Sorry, you guys keep fucking destroying the guys who step into this void. It's just going to keep getting more radical. And like, that's where we're headed. And I'm not even sure that it's a bad thing. And I know, talk me off the ledge. Is it a bad thing? I don't know.
Depends on who that leader is, right?
Well, I'm saying specifically with Fuentes.
What a bad thing?
No, I'm saying specifically Fuentes is him being, because I think he's the most popular voice amongst, under 30 crowd that is politically activated in the country right now. And I'm not sure.
Well, let's clarify why he is why is he unique? And I would argue it's because he's a race realist. That's the position that is so unique about him. And that's the position that he actually is like the champion of. And that is not just about the Jewish question, although I think that like I used to kind of oppose him on his take on that, but ultimately I've been largely swayed by a lot of his perspectives on that side of the argument. But I think that it, like, even people that aren't looking at that side of it, is like the race realism is like, there's these clips of like black people watching his take on black people, and they're just like, that's a good point. Like, I mean, not all black people, obviously.
No. Those videos I've seen,
they're hilarious.
They're great. Yeah, they're great.
Because I think that there's a level of honesty to that, a level of authenticity to that race realism that. And unfortunately, in times of extreme global poverty or national poverty, racial tensions flare and class tensions flare, and racism, just unfortunately tied to class in this nation too. And so I think that what's so unique about him that makes him fill that void, because it's not like he's a particularly manly man. Sorry, Nick. Like he, he is who he is. But he's not like some big hulking dude that's like your typical alpha, but it's that honesty and that authenticity that I think is what's resonating with young men. And like honestly, I think for me, it falls on deaf ears when people try to paint it as though he's like some terribly dangerous force, at least in his current incarnation. I think you might be able to make that argument about a much younger Nick Fuentes' opinions, but it just feels out of touch with the youth when people make those arguments.
No, I agree with that. And I just want to say, I look at Fuentes. You're right. He's not physically imposing, but he's a very strong figure in the sense that he's got this incredible, I mean, aura. The charisma is phenomenal. And then the courage to say the thing that you're not supposed to, and to say it with your whole ass chest and be like, I'm going to fucking have the whole world hate me. Dave, you've talked about this with other people. I forget who you were talking to. Maybe it was Robbie. And it was like that there is just something unique and special about that like most young men today don't have that. Like they came out of the Me Too / woke environment where they're just being canceled and suppressed and hated and basically demonized as if they were like the problem of the entire universe, right? And then you just have this one white kid with a Hispanic last name that rises from the ashes, and he goes like, I'm going to say the N-word. You know? And everyone's like, I love this fucking guy. So, I don't know.
Well, he's got a, look, when Donald Trump first ran for president, right, there was this mix, this like coming together of many different factors that made him this unbelievable force, right? Like, he wasn't just like the most famous guy and the richest guy, but he was also the brashest guy and the funniest guy. And there's just like all these factors that led him, because he could have had all the, you think about like Mike Bloomberg, he was a real rich guy and a real famous guy. But when he went up against Elizabeth Warren, he was like, oh, I don't know. And so, all right, you're done. That doesn't count. Like, you had to have all that plus, and whereas you could find a guy on the street who would be brash enough to go, fuck you, Elizabeth Warren, but he doesn't have $1 billion. And so Fuentes had this kind of like a lot of different qualities that led to him having this moment that he has right now. And the time, he's an incredible talent. He's incredibly funny. He's incredibly he's got a mix of being the best at the like sarcastic, I'm on an Xbox headset just telling you to, suck your mother's dick if you don't like the way, like he's got that, but then also is pretty well read and can make really compelling points and all. So he's got like an incredible, skill set. And it's been fascinating to watch his rise, because it just like says something so profound about what the fuck is going on and how different everything is, that this guy whose his starting position is, under any conventional standard, this can't possibly work. Like, I'm taking all of the positions that are non-starters by definition, and yet it's skyrocketing. That just says how much everything has been turned upside down. Now, to me, I certainly don't have the view that Ian has, that like he convinced me on something. I think in a weird way, to the extent the race realism that I would agree with was something that, at least in my generation, we always kind of took as a given and was just something that we all knew. But you don't be a dick about it. It's just,
but not on the Jewish, influence in America, though. That's been a conversation that has not been broached until recently in political conversations.
Well, in New York, a little bit.
Let me say this. Say this. It's not so much, maybe, I'm not saying it wasn't broached in the same way. I'm just saying the idea of it even being offensive would have been like, from where I'm from, the way I kind of grew up, it'd be almost like if you were like, oh, the Jews run the banks, that would just be like, yeah, that's right. Like, that's, we all,
maybe that's why you turned out so cool, man.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and the sky is blue.
I don't know. It was just a different kind of world. And so, look, I think that the idea that there's no, I don't know. I think that Nick Fuentes has created, Clint's gone.
He's just adjusting something.
I think that it's an interesting moment to see kind of like where all of this goes now. And I think that all of these conversations should be things that we all flesh out a lot more. One of the things I was noticing was that because when I had Fuentes on and when Tucker had Fuentes on, we both kind of brought up these topics. Yeah. Like, so what are we talking about here? Is it the Jews, or is it the Israel lobby and the neocons and the Israeli government? Or can Christians believe in collective guilt and what racial hatred versus this? And it almost seemed like, in a way, we're all kind of talking past each other. And so it's like, you almost have to get like very specific, like, what do you mean here? Because when Tucker, at least when Tucker asked him, about the thing where he was like, look, we're Christians. We can't believe in collective guilt. We can't believe in any of this. And then his response was something like, well, I don't think you can divorce Jewish identity from the fact that a lot of Jews support Israel. You're like, yeah, but like everyone knows that that's not controversial. And so
that's extremely controversial. That's extremely controversial. Well, no, that is like that is, yeah. So like that is me. Like that is
everyone. Even they would admit that. No, even the Zionists would say that's why they support Israel.
To accuse a Jewish person that like to be suspicious of a Jewish person, the American government of you might be more loyal to Israel than America just because you're Jewish. That is controversial.
Hold on, but that's no. But that's a very different. See, that's a slightly different statement. There's a different statement to say that the Jews who are loyal to Israel, like the Zionists, who say in their own words that like part of the reason I love Israel is because it's the Jewish state, and as a Jewish person, I support that state. To say that that has something to do with their Jewish identity is different than to say you suspect any Jewish person of having that feeling. Does that make sense?
But the question is kind of inherent in the sense that if it was about a Chinese national, the question is obvious. You have the obvious question where if there's a Chinese national in the U.S. government in any position of power, is this a spy? And how do you vet that? And what do we? And not to say like I'm not saying I have an opinion on this specifically right now to flesh out. I'm saying that the question is there and it would need to be fleshed out, obviously. Right.
Sure.
And so that exact same question obviously applies to Jewish people and the relationship to Israel. And obviously not all Jewish people would wind up having that level of allegiance that would be concerning, just like not all Chinese nationals would. But the question is extremely controversial to point at a Jewish person just because of their Jewishness, even if it's not a Zionist, but and this is where I was saying that he changed my mind. Because when I first approached this concept, being very new to learning about it and just trying to learn my best, I initially zeroed in on just Israel and Zionism, and we should divorce that completely from the Jewish part of it. And obviously, like you're a perfect example of why like you can't blame all Jews for like that's not what I'm trying to say. What I'm saying is that the uncomfortable question is it's just the conversation of how do you figure out what to do about the question, given that we have that we have examples of foreign nationals spying for other countries in government positions that you wouldn't have known that they had those other allegiances. You wouldn't have known other than that national, like that identity.
Okay, so maybe I'd say this because I know Clint, I'm sure you have, I don't know, but like have you read like Thomas Sowell and Walter Williams and guys like that?
No, I mean, I've
who they are, but I've
got small exposure, but I've not read whole book.
A lot of them like went through the phase of like reading those guys as one of our, so like a lot of those guys, look, they would just like kind of make, I mean, at this point, these are kind of standard boilerplate arguments, but they were black guys who were making the argument that actually welfare undermines the black community and the minimum wage is the worst law for young black kids. And actually you want free market capitalism and not socialism and that. And so if you were awoken, as James Lindsay will get offended by saying, but if you saw that and went, oh, wow, that makes sense to me, that actually what, and then you were to say, okay, I want to convince like other black people, like both of them were black people who were like, hey, like, let's convince other black people to like not, and then you were to say, okay, but the reason why a lot of these black people support this is because of their black identity and the fact that their black identity is played on by, politicians who are going, wasn't slavery so bad and wasn't this so bad? It's like, yeah, that's not like actually that controversial to say. It's just like, well, yeah, obviously that's the game we're in, is trying to convince them that this play on your identity is bullshit. Now, that being said,
but in the 80s and 90s, it was controversial to say those things. And now I think
look, I mean, it might have been, look, I guess when I say it's controversial, yeah, it's probably still controversial to say these things in some groups. I guess more my point was that's probably nothing that me or Tucker or anyone else would disagree with Fuentes on, is more my point. Yeah. I'm saying that's not really, that's not what separates him from what any of the rest of us are saying. It's not something Scott Horton or even Ron Paul or Pat Buchanan would disagree with, right? So like, there are these things that it's almost like I feel. Look, I'm trying to be fair. I think I've been about as fair to Nick Fuentes as anyone can be, at least in my position, and maybe not as anyone can be. But I think I've been
came at you for a while.
I think you've been more fair to him than he's been to you.
Sure. But first off, I think that's certainly true. But I've been more than reasonably fair to Nick Fuentes. But I also feel like there's this thing where like people are almost like this, like, He's like, oh, look, you're sucking up to him now. And it's like, no, I'm actually not. And I actually don't give a fuck if the Groypers are on my side or not on my side. I've had a mixed relationship. Some of them have been very cool. Some of them not. I don't give a shit, really. I got enough of everything in my Twitter replies. There's people loving me and hating me more than I can possibly handle already. But no, I just don't think again, I don't think he's added some new element here. I think in a way, this all gets very convoluted. Again, it wouldn't be controversial to any of us to say that, of course, Black identity is a big part of why Black people supported Black Lives Matter. But at the same time, that doesn't actually mean it
but
doesn't.
The element that Nick adds, I think, is that, for example, what just happened at the Heritage Foundation, where Bro came out and supported Tucker Carlson, and then there's this huge backlash, and this list of demands is made, and that list of demands is basically no. You need, not only do you need to apologize, but you need you need to have that apology written by our anti-Semitism department, and that anti-Semitism department is basically staffed by a bunch of Jewish people that are a part. And then we're gonna have Shabbat dinners that we're gonna vet everyone that comes through this agency with Shabbat dinners. It's so Nick, it's bizarre.
Yeah, they're certainly handing him a lot of wins, but I guess it comes down to this,
let me finish the argument. That's not the end of the argument. So that's one example. And then the other example is Mamdani just gets elected, right? And if you look at the donors, the massive flood, over $40 million of money feeds into Cuomo, into Andrew Cuomo. And a lot of this is from Republican, but not all Republican Jewish people. But the top 10 donors, 9 out of 10 of them are Jewish billionaires. And so it's those are just kind of factual information and take it as you will. But I think that the element that Nick Fuentes adds is that we need to have a solution to this. And I think, and I'm not speaking for Nick Fuentes, this is just my impression, is that I think he adds an element of we need to have a national conversation that addresses that and does something about it. And that doesn't mean that he's saying to deport everyone. And I'm not saying to deport Jews or anything. But
I guess it's just what I'm hearing again here is that you go, look how many Jews there are in this, disproportionately in this world. And we need to have a national conversation about this. And oh, sure. I'm not arguing with any of that, but it does become this thing where it's I'm just trying to pin down exactly what the argument is, because the truth is that, and again, this will be for the people who are just using circular logic. And I know there will be some of them who listen who will just disagree with me going, look at Dave, the Jew.
Yeah, I know,
of course,
right?
The Jew is trying, it's like this.
That's a tired argument.
The point you're making is totally fair.
Listen, I'm just saying, well, hold on. There's a lot of really low IQ shit that just for you guys spreading it. Also, Nick and Ian both look down at you for how low IQ this shit is. But go, hey, Clint, in our whole philosophy, there's a wildly disproportionate amount of Jews who shaped the whole goddamn thing. Yep. There's a disproportionate amount of Jews, Ludwig von Mises and fucking Murray Rothbard, and all these guys were incredible fucking figures. And by the way, oh my God, if you look at the anti-Zionist movement, there's a disproportionate amount of Jews who are leading the cause in that. And oh, by the way, if you look at the people who have platformed Nick Fuentes, and then the people who have funded or been partners, or if you want to start going through this, Tucker's got a Jewish what, or
that's not the argument that's being made.
No. Hold on. Let me just finish my. Yeah, but let me just finish my point.
He's not talking about your argument. He's talking about the fucking.
I'm saying that the fact is that this is, if you go, oh, there's all these disproportionate Jews in this. It's yeah, but there's also in this whole other counter movement, and it just, again, it's just it becomes this thing where. It's almost like leftist logic. It's talking about how men.
I think I can break this down into a less controversial way of looking at it. I am very deeply.
It's not even a controversial. I just want to get very, very specific.
Okay,
if we're saying let's have a national conversation about this, then sure, let's have that conversation.
Let me make it concise, because this is my concern, and this is what I do share with the Fuentes audience, is that I'm deeply concerned about basically predation against the American people from the ruling elite, be they any fucking flavor variety under the sun. I'm very disconcerted by that, and I think that there is obviously allegiance and also blackmail and also acquisition of our politicians, not just from Israel, but from a lot of foreign nations, but a lot from fucking Israel. Let's just be clear about that. And it's it's like,
I mean, there's also a lot from like other Middle Eastern nations as well, too. Like, they're also using their money to buy influence.
They keep screaming about Tucker Carlson. They're right. I don't like the fucking Qatar connection to our government either.
Well, putting that on Tucker is bullshit.
No, I know.
And even putting it on Qatar is bullshit. But I will say, if anyone wants to go fucking read Scott Horton's goddamn book, the whole goddamn invasion of Yemen from fucking 2015 to 2021 was all because of Saudi influence. It really didn't have much to do with Israel.
Well, and also,
I mean, and the fucking war in Afghanistan really didn't have that much to do with Israel either. It's just that Iraq, Syria, Libya, Somalia, fucking Yemen, those ones all really did.
But also our relationship to Qatar, the people that are screaming about the relationship to Qatar, like Laura Loomer, the reason that they have that fucking base there is because it's a great forward operating base to threaten Iran. That's the reason that we have such a great relationship.
Well,
sorry, go ahead.
Right, and even the this whole fucking military base that they said isn't going to be a military base, which is not whatever the hell the latest thing over here is. That was all a fucking makeup for Israel attacking,
for the
fucking bombing Qatar, and then Trump feeling like he has to do something. So yes, this is all true. I'm just saying that, like, look, I guess this is my point. Like, it seems like, look, when I'm on, I was just on Piers Morgan arguing with someone, or Seth Dillon about this stuff. And then I was on, I had Tucker Carlson on my show. And in those shows, I really was just defending Fuentes and going like, fuck him, fuck you. You know what I mean? Like, like Seth Dillon goes like, well, he's a terrible person. And I go, I know, but you're worse because you support Israel. Like that was just my whole attitude. And then, the whole thing with Tucker, I was like, well, who's going to tell me I should cancel Nick Fuentes? Ben Shapiro, And I don't think, the truth is, I think Nick's a real talented guy. I think he's actually a good dude. Is kind of that's the read I get. Okay. But if you're going to say, hey, he's woken me up to the fact that, or not woken me up, but like he convinced me that maybe I shouldn't just say it's Israel and the Israel lobby. I should say it's the Jews or something like that.
That is not what I mean at all. Can I clarify?
No. Sure.
Yeah, I need to clarify that because that's super not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that foreign influence is a problem, right? And foreign influence with money is a problem. And divorcing, and so like if that was Chinese people or it was Qatari people or it was Egyptian people, that would be obvious, and we would want them to. We would want all of that money registered. But Jewish Americans hold, because the Jewish people are diaspora people, they hold a special place where there's a lot of American money, quote unquote, that is Jewish billionaire money that is clearly Israeli influence. It is obviously Israeli influence, and we all know it's Israeli influence. And Miriam Adelson is not an American citizen, and so we know that like that's kind of weird. Yeah, but there's a bunch of them, like Bill Ackman, Larry Ellison. Like the list is enormous, and all of these donors to Cuomo's campaign that are donating to Cuomo's campaign, like. Yeah, you could, like in that case, you could maybe make the argument that their concern for New York is about their American life and in New York, right? But ultimately, like, I think that America's growing realization is that way too much of that is not about American interest at all.
But that I completely agree with.
Right? And the uncomfortable part of that question that is new, that Fuentes is the one broaching, is that forces us to confront the Jewish identity specifically because of that diaspora, and I don't know where you put the line in terms of how do you regulate that, because it will always be complicated.
So, but up until you got to the point where you said the Fuentes part of that is questioning the Jewish diaspora, I'm not actually sure what part of that any of us would disagree with. Like,
no, Clint, not us. I don't think
I agree with all that.
But again, so I'm just asking because this is what I'm trying to get down to. So, Clint, for the entire time me and you have been in this camp that we've been in, we all would have said exactly that. Up until but Fuentes' contribution is telling us about the Jewish diaspora. So I'm just asking, what exactly is that? Because look, here's my point, right? Yes, we would completely agree with all of that. We would also point out that there's lots of people who are not Jewish who seem to have every bit as much of a crazy, devotion to Israel.
Mike
and
Huckabee,
then there's also a whole bunch.
That guy's out of his mind.
Right. The list could go on and on and on and on.
Military operation that they've been orchestrating for like 80 years, right?
But now you're going to get into a thing where it's like, okay, you can't say only one side has agency and the other side doesn't have agency. That's right. It's incredibly mixed up and intertwined. And in fact, there's all types of people who you could easily say were the bosses of the Jews who went along with it for their own reasons. And like, was Dick Cheney really was he tricked by the Jewish neocons, or did he use the Jewish neocons to get his Halliburton guys back who he had lost billions of dollars for more? But my point is just this, okay? When you get down to this, this is the thing that I guess is a little bit frustrating. So see if this makes sense to me. I'll try to keep this as brief as possible. But you know, Clint, when I go, I was saying on my show the other day that, you know, the socialists will say, hey, what do you mean we can't afford all this bullshit? We could afford all these wars. And then that is
Drives
kind of a good response to a war hawk, you know, but to anyone else, you'd go, no, we couldn't have afforded that either.
Right.
So yes. No,
we have negative $38 trillion, you fucking imbecile. Yeah.
Right. So I guess you owned that guy, but it's like if you came to your wife and you went, you charged a whole bunch of shit we can't afford, and then you went, I'm going to charge even more shit we can't afford, and then she goes, we can't afford this, and you go, oh, you're going to say we can't afford this when you can't. It's like, okay, you're both. Anyway, my point is just kind of this, right? There's a thing that I saw a clip of Fuentes the other day, and it was great. It was so funny. It was response to this Ben Shapiro, his last thing, and he goes, Ben Shapiro, I got nothing to fucking apologize to you for, because all the clips you played of me were after I just asked this totally reasonable question, and then you fucking tried to ruin me. So suck my dick. And I watched that and I went, yes, I'm on Nick's side, you know? But then after you think about it, you go, okay, I'm on Nick's side, but it's kind of the same thing as going, oh, you could afford this, we could afford this. Like, okay, yes, he was wrong then, but what about all the fucking kind of like Nazi shit that you now added to all of this? Because it's not like, I just don't, you know, when I hear people going like, oh, whatever, I first was a little suspicious of this, but then I was like, oh, this is a better way to say it. I do go, look, this kid has blown up and he's pushed the Overton window further than anyone I've ever seen push it. And I've been around some really influential people. But the fact is that even now, I think it's better if he's going on Tucker Carlson's show and going like, well, look, I don't really mean the craziest shit I was ever saying. That was kind of like, we were being hilarious and I was saying the craziest shit you could say. Now, I know that's not the easiest thing, especially when you're Nick Fuentes. That's a difficult thing to do because your whole brand is that I'm not a bitch. These other guys are bitches. I'm the most real motherfucker ever. And so if you ever walk off that ledge a little bit, it's like you're afraid you're going to lose your whole thing. But to some degree, you got to admit, dude, he's painted himself into a Nazi corner that's like, dude, this is going to turn off a lot of people if you can't find a way to go, okay, I don't mean that, because that is crazy.
Yep.
And that's
and
why I feel like
that, suck my dick, fine, I don't give a shit. But that is the
I
truth,
agree with
dude.
you completely.
And we all know this, you know?
And that's why I'm saying that I agree that it's good that that's entering into other podcasts and he's having to like have those conversations in moderate ways where he really elucidates his points and hopefully like explains them so that we can get on, because he's very bombastic and he's young and he like, you know, grew up in the internet generation where it's like, you know, young people just say more shit. Dude, they're just way more. The internet
most
makes
of the craziest shit he
No,
said
dude, I would have been
when he was
worse.
under 25.
I think I would have been worse.
I could believe that. Yeah, I could totally believe that.
Under 25?
Well, also,
I would have been put in prison for the shit I was saying.
Also, and I'll say this, because like, look, let's also be completely fair here. And I'm sure if there is, you know, whatever. Okay, so what I've said, you know, people can cut that part and forget this part. But also, let's keep in mind here, I mean, look at the fucking, and this is the thing which makes it almost hard to have these conversations. And it's why I want to say this to you two, because I wouldn't say this in other conversations. I'll say this to you two, because look, did you see the fucking Genocide 2025 fest to cancel.
Yeah.
I mean, there was the most fucking genocidal nature conference I've had. Yeah, this fucking retard Brandon Tatum saying I would have turned it into a parking lot if I was prime minister. Give me 24 hours. Lindsey Graham is bragging about how they ran out of bombs. Fucking Randy Fine and all these. So they're gonna say cancel. You guys are grown fucking adults, and you've said as you're at least the same. At the very least, you're the same.
Way worse.
Well, you're far.
Their
your
policies
worst,
have actually killed countless people.
Look. Well, they're worse for a few reasons. Number one, because it's actually happening. It is just, look, it is a different thing to be an edgelord young person today and go throw all the Jews in the oven. That's a different thing than if you were living in a world where Jews are actually being thrown in ovens and you went, keep throwing all those Jews in the ovens. That's just a little bit different. It's a little bit different to root for something that's actually happening than to just kind of edgelord and say the most fucked up thing. They are doing it while it's happening. And also, they're not his age. For all the shit about fucking out, and when I say his age, I mean they go back 7 years on him and pull up, So anyway, yes, Nick should be Nick shouldn't be allowed back in. Nick burst the door down. Yeah. None of us are platforming him. None of us are accepting him back in. He won. That's what fucking happened. Okay, so that's just the reality. It's not like an opinion. He won. He was on Tucker because he won. He was on Candace because he won. Honestly, he wasn't on my show because he won. I loved that he won, but I fucking would have had him on. I had him on my show back in the fucking day, but he did nonetheless win. Yeah. And so now the question is okay,
what does that mean?
Is it a good thing? Oh, well, I'll say this. I think that there's an Overton window, obviously, always. And maybe a lot of people almost would have taken it in a weird way. We take it as a given that the Overton window extends to the neoconservatives, the neoliberals, and hopefully all the way out here to me. And then they always wanted to say, no, you're outside the Overton window. And you're like, fuck you, I'm reasonable and rational, so I should be inside the Overton window. And then in a weird way, it's been shattered all the way over here. And some people who you would have thought, well, yeah, maybe they shouldn't be in the Overton window are now in. But we're in too. So I'd rather be in it than out of it. As dumb as that is, that's kind of how I feel about the whole thing.
I don't think that's dumb.
I'd rather everyone's in the Overton window.
Yeah. Well, I don't know.
I like that. I want to just fuck them up in argument. Isn't it amazing, dude, that all of us, all we fucking ever wanted was a fair shot. Yep. Let us have our shows online. Let us do big debates. Let us do big things. And then we could all see who has the better argument. I've never for a second thought to myself, man, I wish YouTube would kick Douglas Murray off.
That's why I love our side so much. That's why, and that's also why there's kind of this loyalty amongst thieves thing that I have. That when I see them going after Nick, when I see them going after Tucker in particular, I get enraged in a way that's really hard to explain. It's like Tucker Carlson for me was the guy who was at least telling 75% of the truth when he was on Fox News with the biggest nightly news show in the fucking country, maybe in the world at the time. And I was so appreciative of him. And then for him to get shit canned as a consequence of basically, who knows if it was talking about military industrial complex or pharma or whatever, but he was just telling way too much of the truth. And then he goes out and he goes independent. He becomes bigger than he's ever been. And he doesn't just stop there. He could have just been I won. I'm gonna maintain my funding sources. He goes, nah, fuck that. I'm gonna do 3-hour sit downs with Scott Horton and Dave Smith and all these other people that are pushing the envelope even further. And then he goes, you know what? Fuck that. I'm still not content. Now I'm gonna have Nick Fuentes on. I love Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson, look, I know a lot of people question his background because of his dad and blah blah blah. I don't give a fuck. If he's controlled, if he's controlled op, God bless Tucker Carlson and his controlled op ass because he's improving the world so much.
Look, man, all that shit is that's just stupid, man. There's always, if we're ever going to actually make a difference in this country, we're not a bunch of communists, if you're ever going to make a difference in this country, it's not going to be all poor people who do it.
Of course.
There will be some people with resources who you will need to help you. And some of those people with resources might be people who are connected to other people. And like, obviously, and so even if you're going to say, if Tucker's a Fed, then what? There's some branch of the Feds who are trying to preach divorce from Israel and sovereignty. Okay,
I mean, that's how we want the Feds to be, dude.
Yeah,
like, that's how we hope the Feds would be.
Yeah, like, I hope that's the case, but I don't think it is.
I can't tell you how much I'm pretty convinced, and I know Tucker pretty well. I'm pretty convinced it's not the case, but I wish it was. I would love to go like, oh, one of their factions has my back. Okay, good.
Me too. Me too.
But I don't think so. That's not. But look, I mean, I think what's going on here is that we're watching a weird thing. Like, there's Nick going on Tucker Carlson. I said this on my podcast the day afterward. It was almost much bigger than anything that was said in the conversation. Absolutely. The thing that happened, it was a moment that was there's okay. You remember how up until Donald Trump won the election in 2024, the media still tried to pretend that they were the mainstream and like Joe Rogan was the alternative.
Yeah.
And then it was like, as soon as that election happened, it was like they all started going, we need to find our own Joe Rogan. But just like a month earlier, they would have been like the fringe Joe Rogan. But then they had to admit it. It was almost like something like, oh, you have to admit it now. Like even though it was already real, it had been real for years before that. But you just, now you have to admit it. And what they had to admit was that they don't control the conversation anymore. And the Rogan getting it was admitting that they don't control the conversation about wokeism and COVID and leftism, but Nick Fuentes getting it was that they don't own the conversation on Israel and the Jews.
Yeah.
And so now you're watching the freak out about that happen. So that part I think is very good.
Well,
like that is a necessary part. But I also do think that much like, I'm blanking on the name of the book, Clint, but Ludwig von Mises wrote a book about the rise of the fucking Nazis and how there was basically like, and look, I'm not trying to like say fucking Nixon, that's not what I'm saying. But the point of the book was that there was this super like the socialism rose up and then everyone went, oh shit, that's the problem. And then the fucking fascism rose up. And it's like, there still is a point that like we should celebrate when this is breaking down. We should always also try to make sure that what replaces it is something that is legitimately positive, rational, moral, something not something that's unreasonable, not something that lets any group off the hook, but also something that doesn't lead to persecuting good people.
Can I actually speak as a young person?
Trick.
Can I speak as a young person watching this happen?
Yeah, please,
as like the new guy on the scene that generally is usually the dumbest person in the room and has the most to learn from everyone else that's been here and is more studied and has a lot more experience. For me, it's really beneficial and really exciting. And I think that I probably speak for a lot of Americans to have Nick has kicked that door down. And now that conversation is in the mainstream in a different way. And that you elucidated better than I am. And I think that what's so scary to the establishment that is on the other, like the Zionist team, and so exciting for the American people is that I want to watch all of the experts, like the older, more wise people like yourself, like Tucker Carlson, like all of these folks have that conversation so that it can be moderated in a way that will the mixture of ideas will have a more open, free environment in order to sort of release the tension and to have a rational conclusion that we need to end up in a place where we're not persecuting innocent people and we're not identity grouping entire groups of people.
Dude, I'll give you
because it's
example.
So easy for this complex conversation to go there.
That's such a great point. Well, so I'll say this. I think this is one of the things that really should change going forward. And I think in a weird way, there's been, whatever. Look, like now that Nick Fuentes has gone on Tucker Carlson's show and we're all still here, you know what I mean? Like, and now we're going forward. And then even though Mark Levin screamed they must be canceled, he actually has no means by which to do that. I hope not. So now that we're here, I'll say this, and this is like, again, this should be almost the most reasonable statement to make. But you know how, and I know a lot of people on the right have noticed this, right? You know how people like Ben Shapiro and even Charlie Kirk, God bless his soul, and people, a lot of other people, I guess Dinesh D'Souza was one of the ones who debated Nick Fuentes, but a lot of other people on the right wing who are kind of known for debating people would go, I'm not going to debate Nick Fuentes because he's too far over the line. But then they would debate a Maoist and an abortionist and this, and you would just go like, by what? Like, how is it possible that by your own worldview, you would judge this to be more at the very least? You go, no, we're not doing that anymore. What we should be looking to do, look, if I will sit down and have, which I have done several times, if I will sit down and have a reasonable argument like gentleman with somebody who's advocating that Israel should finish the job in Gaza, then I can sit down and advocate or sit down and have a conversation with someone advocating that Jews get deported from America. Like, look, even like if you were saying citizens, like me and my family have to be forcefully deported, I'm very against that. And I'd fight you to the death if you tried to make that happen. But that's actually not as fucked up. Like, if you were telling me I could leave with all my resources and my family, that's not as fucked up as saying Israel should finish the job. Yeah. So like, I've been saying this is like a consistent theme of mine for like 15 years now, that I've been saying like, let's rethink what the regime's hierarchy of moral outrages is. And I think that all of these, what should happen going forward. Well, yes. And even if it's state sponsored or state enforced. But I think what should happen going forward is that all of these questions where it goes like, is it the Jews or is it the Israel lobby? Is it the this or is it the that? Is Nick too far? I think we should have more and more debates about this, more and more conversations about this. I think you know what I mean? Like, I think we should always be working to refine what we're trying to do here. And look, I'm just firmly on Tucker Carlson's side of this, where I'm always going to err on the side of like, I am an individualist who believes in God and believes in like the value of all people. And I believe in like, I'm against violence and against cruelty, or I'm against the initiation of violence. I'm fine with defensive violence. And like, but I think all of these things we should have many more discussions about. And we should just decide, now that we have all the fucking juice, we should just decide that,
to be good.
Yeah, that's the new rule now, dude. Yeah. We can talk about all these things. Yep. And honestly, even just the three of us have a lot of power in that world. It's fucking weird, dude. I'm sure it's weird for you, Ian. Fucking, it's weird. It's weird to be me. I'm sure it's really weird to be you. I know it's weird to be you, Clint. But isn't it crazy? There are these I was
running a mortgage company 5 years ago and playing beach volleyball, and now I do like fucking 50 million impressions across social media. It's insane.
You know what's weird, dude? And I thought, I swear to God, I don't mean this to just be like, sound like I'm just bragging or talking about myself, because it's really nothing like that impressive. I think I've had some like pretty good showings over the last couple of years, but I was on Steven Crowder's show like a week ago. I don't know if any of you guys saw this, but it was the dumbest fucking waste of my time ever. Like, it was just retarded. Yeah, terrible. But someone just told me, a friend of mine just was like, dude, do you look at the comments on that? And I went on his YouTube channel, and the comments are like, I mean, dude, it's worse than what Douglas Murray got. Yeah. It is. Go look at the YouTube video. It's on his channel. It's Stephen Crowder,
his own audience.
His own audience. Dude, I got like, I mean, I've had a good couple years, but I got like 450,000 subscribers on YouTube. He's got like 6 million. Like, he's so much bigger than me. But like, I know you've probably experienced this, Ian. Like, there might be someone with 5 million followers who's been around for 20 years, and you got like 1 million something, and you've been around for like a few years, but you're so much more relevant than them. That like the audience is just, and there's a weird thing that's happening where it's like, no one's buying into that old, well, like we kind of set the tone going forward.
Absolutely.
I got interesting to set the tone.
I got quote tweeted by Will Chamberlain and James Lindsay, and you go into their replies, and I'm like, this is their replies. I'm just retweeting them. I'm not even fucking countering it. I'm just retweeting it and just letting my followers see what they have to say. And my followers are just like, you're like he's obviously telling the truth. Like there is literally everything I said in that rant, just because I opened it up with a Nick Fuentes rant. But everything I say is like, this is a mandate. You have to put this country first. If you don't, you will lose. And it's like, these are impossible points to disagree with. You cannot contend with this. This is such a given argument that, like, if you were to run this to 95% of Americans, they're going to go, I love this guy. I agree with every word. But they hate it because they realize that the connotation is that their golden goose, their relationship with Israel and their Zionist cause dies as a consequence of that mentality. And it's like, it's unbelievable, the shift in the landscape. But I just wanted to go back really quick to the point that I was trying to get to, is that what they did to Tucker Carlson is exactly what they did to Charlie Kirk over the past 2 years, but condensed into a month or two period.
And Charlie, in the public square.
Yeah, and Charlie had it
like super in the public square.
Charlie had it more in private over a 2-year period, where it was like threats behind the scenes and this and that. And I think Tucker's not really in that position where he has these funding sources that get to pressure him so aggressively. So he's just like, he's kind of detached. He's not on social media. He doesn't feel it the same way. So they had to do it in a really public fashion. But what you had at that event is a sitting senator, a sitting congressman, basically running a foreign influence operation against the top right-wing commentator in America. And these guys are funded to the tune of an insane amount of money from what I believe is a foreign lobby, which ought to be registered under FAR, which it is not, which is AIPAC, or the RJC or whatever it's called. It's like, these guys are running in intelligence operations against Americans, against like the most beloved commentator on the right wing. And we just lost one of our top 5 beloved commentators on the right wing by assassination 6 weeks ago. And they're calling him the same things, but even more aggressively and even worse. And it's just like, I think we're winning. I'll be very clear about that. But I am deeply disturbed at the audacity, the nature of that operation, the brazenness with which they ran it. It's fucking gross, man. And I'm like seriously
you're bringing up the most
out.
important point, because it's the difference in this conversation is that we are dealing with an adversarial nation who sees it as an existential threat if this conversation is lost, and might be willing to do literally anything to stop that from happening. Man. Some of them, not all of them, but definitely some of the leadership in the Likud party. And they just multiplied their propaganda budget by 20x, right? That is an insane multiplier. And we are seeing the outcomes of that on our social media, in our conversations, in our politics. And so there's this crazy, right? So we're in the middle, like all of us are in the middle of this crazy situation where we're trying to be regular American people having conversations in our free speech environment. But the ultimate nature of the reality is that we are on a battlefield against a military state that is attacking us with military means, like intelligence operations means. And I cannot help but suspect, like deeply, at this point, I'm well over 90% suspect that Charlie Kirk was a casualty of that exact operation. And that is that is warfare. That is the kind of thing that we should be expecting our government and our leadership to stand up to, that as though it was warfare.
And it's so much worse, right? Though, because if you're right, Ian, this guy was their fucking friend, dude.
Exactly.
Like one of their best guys. And I mean, that's what makes it so dark. If Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, in their position at the head of the FBI, if they are actively covering this up, which, by the way, it looks like they're not really digging. I mean, the fact that he goes after Joe Kent and because
looks like they're actively covering the digging up. They're putting the dirt back in the hole as quickly as possible.
Right, almost as fast as they covered up the site of the murder.
Yeah, but I remember when they were campaigning and Kash Patel promised me that they would get Chauncey Billups. And I was like, all right. If this guy's going to guarantee they'll bring Chauncey Billups to justice, then we definitely got to vote for Donald Trump.
Look, the most pressing thing in this country is point shaving in the NBA.
Well, yeah, right. Literally, that's what they're people throwing sandwiches at cops or whatever. I think that there's, look, it doesn't change my percentage of how much I believe Charlie was a part of this, but it makes me 100% convinced that at the least that's what they're using. They're rallying with that. But again, you got to look at this stuff dispassionately and go, well, look,
I'm not good at that.
Well, look, even if Israel had nothing to do with the Charlie Kirk assassination. You know, it's like in the same way that the 9/11 truthers, and not saying that this proves that they're wrong, but they used to always look at that document in the Project for a New American Century where they said, we'll never get our war plans done short of another Vietnam style attack or Pearl Harbor style attack. And so you go, okay, yes, that's true that they said that, but look, even if they had nothing to do with 9/11, you could still see where all those people, when they got that attack, went, oh shit, here's the. So if you imagine Israel is just getting destroyed in this PR game, and then Charlie Kirk dies, and so then all of them try to jump on it very sloppily. Like, I'm not saying this, maybe they were a part of it, maybe they weren't a part of it, but even if they weren't, they're all jumping on this, and so now there's this moment, right? Like you said, one of our top 5, guys gets taken out. And now there's this huge thing of all these people are blaming Israel for it. And then oh my God, is this just going to reinforce the people who are against Israel? Or can Netanyahu use this to reinforce, hey, he was one of our guys, so you got to support him. But at least what we know is happening right now is that I think, who are the top 3 right-wing fucking people in America?
Tucker Carlson?
I think it's Tucker, Candace, and Nick.
Yep, it is.
I think that's the 3. I think it's Tucker, Candace, and Nick. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe
shot.
But I think that's
That's right.
And so what are they saying? They're saying cancel the 3 biggest guys.
Yeah.
They're saying cancel the entire audience that watches.
Yeah,
cancel all of TPUSA's audience.
Well, and they're trying to cancel fucking Matt Walsh and Megyn Kelly and anybody who won't disavow the top 3 biggest guys.
Under some pressure.
Right. Like if you even, look, I'm just saying those are the top 3 guys who they're really after. But if you looked at like the top 20 guys, like almost maybe like 3 of them are hardcore on the Zionist side, and then a bunch of them are like ambivalent, or at least. But look, this has become the issue. And it's a thing that people can't deny. I had I said earlier, I had a long post about how this is the whole thing. That is this is the whole thing that's tearing up the GOP and tearing up the MAGA coalition. But you just at a certain point, you can't kind of deny that. So they're clearly trying to, as they get more and more desperate, the language, like I said, that whole conference was like genocidal in nature. And what you didn't mention, the Josh Hammer fucking line in that article for the Daily Mail was insane,
I forgot about that.
Dude.
They've done so much crazy shit. I can't even remember all
that. That was wild to me. That it was the conclusion. It was the last line in an article about Charlie Kirk and how he would have felt about this. And after all of these guys, just literally, like you were talking about Jack Posobiec and all the guys who are on the Zionist side are going, it was the left who killed Charlie Kirk. No more questions to be asked. We know it was the left, and we know the reason is because the rhetoric is so out of control, and they call everybody Nazis. And then they just turned right around and started calling the most popular right-wingers, all the most popular right-wingers, Nazis. Like, you can't even write this in a fucking like soap opera, dude.
It's so desperate.
Too wild. That's what we just watched over the last week.
It's so unbelievably desperate, but it's also very dangerous. And look, I understand the point.
It's not dangerous. It's intentionally dangerous. Look,
I agree.
At the very least, it's not at the very least here, right? This is where I'll go as the daywalker of half fucking on your side, half not. Let me say, this is where I'll meet you. That's not just reckless. Look, man, I know enough about this fucking business to know that for Josh Hammer to write that in an article about Charlie Kirk, he not only thought about that, his editor thought about that, the publication thought about that. They all made the decision. They are intentionally, and then with that whole, look at the rhetoric of Mark Levin and literally look at that. It would be
not just.
And
look, hold on.
Sorry, Clint. Hold on one second.
Okay.
This is what I'm giving Nick Fuentes credit for. Okay, what I really gave him credit for, and this. I'll fight with him forever. I don't care if he ends up hating me and the Groypers end up hating me. But I will give Nick Fuentes credit for the rest of my life for in the immediate aftermath of Charlie Kirk's death, hitting all the right tones.
Great response.
And just saying the right thing and going, I disavow violence. And to think about how he's been, even when he came on my show, when he came on Tucker's show, I'm not trying to say he's moderating because I don't want to like make it sound like I'm making him sound like a bitch, but he said very reasonable things when we asked him about some of these questions. And then to hear the way Mark Levin and Randy Fine and Lindsey Graham are talking about, we killed all the right people, we ran out of bombs, you're all Nazis, you're all this. Fuck that, dude. Those guys are intentionally playing with fire in the most volatile time, and they're hoping for violence to happen.
But this is the point that I wanted to make is that
sorry guys, I just needed to win that street cred back over Clint. Now go ahead.
No, it's fine. It's fine. But that's the point I'm trying to make is that it's not, I don't really give a fuck what Mark Levin says. He's basically irrelevant. And I certainly don't give a fuck what Josh Hammer says. He's totally irrelevant. What I do care about is you have elected representatives, Ted Cruz, Randy Fine, Lindsey Graham, a handful of others that are coming out and they're saying the same rhetoric about basically, you know, not just Fuentes, but like by contagion effect, Tucker Carlson. And it's like, like what I see happening is a legitimate foreign intelligence operation being ran domestically, not by bought and paid for commentators. That would be one thing. I'm talking about our fucking elected representatives. I feel like I say this and people don't actually process how serious what I'm saying is. This is fucking treason. Like, this is like the biggest thing you can do.
Oh, yeah.
And they're doing it to Tucker Carlson, basically like the jewel of the right wing's eye. It's unbelievable, the audacity with which they're functioning. And just to get to one other point, because I've been very patient and I'm letting everybody do their monologues. When you're saying just because they're covering up the Charlie Kirk case doesn't mean that they were involved. Just because they're like not digging the way that they should doesn't imply that they're, you know, not interested in justice. It just means that they're very concerned about losing the pro-Israel argument. Well, I'll tell you how you actually fucking do that. You be transparent. You give me footage of Tyler in the prone position taking that shot. They're doing everything in their power not to give me the fucking truth. They're giving me everything in their power not to give me the answers. And then when I go, hey, I think you're covering up, they go, what do you, hate Jews? And it's like, no, bitch. I think you fucking murdered a guy I knew. And I'm really upset about it. So sorry for the rant.
And probably more than half of America thinks that too.
Yeah, dude, it's really bad. Just be transparent, man. Like I keep repeating this over and over again. I don't want to live in a country where political assassinations happen and we don't get justice. It almost happened with Trump. No one gives a fuck. That kid got clapped and it's like, and I have no idea what actually happened there. We have no motive, communications. I mean, it's crazy, dude.
Well, in a way, isn't that the craziest thing, right? That like this happened to Trump and there was something, I know I felt this, I'm sure you guys did too, but wasn't there like a thing almost like when Charlie got killed that like you were like, oh yeah, you almost realized how real what happened to Trump was? Because there is something about it, like when it happens to Trump and he just catches it in the ear and then it's like a funny meme almost in a way, like, oh, he stood up and he was like, fuck yeah, oh, wasn't that so badass? But then you see like the difference between getting nicked in the fucking ear and getting nicked in the jugular and fucking wow, that you know, and
very differently.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think you know, again, man,
and I gotta say, I think Trump took that message to heart.
The fucking thing that's like even as we were talking about before, like. You know, when we were saying like there's not the government, there's not even the deep state, there's not even the CIA, there's not, you know, there's like all these different groups and probably we'll never get to the bottom of exactly who's who and who's what. So we got to put them into like things that we can understand. But the truth is that there's a whole bunch of our deep state, the deep state of the United States of America and the deep state of Israel are deeply intertwined.
Absolutely.
You know, and they're
no doubt about that.
I mean, I think it's Alex Jones's Globalists is essentially that, just with a more ambiguous name.
Yes, although, but he just never hit the nail on the head. You know, that's my beef with Alex Jones. It's not even like it's that he always through the time when it mattered the most. What he always led people to believe was that the real action was in the EU and the fucking Bilderberg Group and the Council on Foreign Relations, when actually, and there was action there, but the real action was the clean break. And he just never really jumped on that and got that. But now I think he's better on it, whatever. But the thing is that everything is so intertwined that it's essentially, because even all those guys, like most of the clean breakers, were also with the NATO expansionist shit, and also, there's like all these different factors, but that group they're jumping on this right now, and they're really, look, we're running a brand new experiment where there's the propaganda apparatus is broken, and they're still trying to govern in the same way, and we really don't know exactly how this game works. And so right now, it is scary in a way, but it also kind of, it feels like these like dying gasps.
Yes, it does.
Like there's something about like when you see Mark Levin going, you don't think we'll cancel you? We canceled Pat Buchanan. We canceled the
30 of his viewers.
Well, and you're just sitting there. He said to me on Twitter, I'll never have Dave on when I challenge him to debate me, and I go, fuck you, faggot. I don't care whether you have me on.
It'd be the largest audience he's had in 5 years.
Now look. Because you ratio someone on Twitter, that doesn't prove everything, but it does seem to show, because the Steven Crowder's comments all being with me doesn't say everything or whatever, but all these things, like it does seem to point in a direction where you're like, I know you're saying that, but I don't actually think that Mark Levin has some kill switch and is going to be able to have all of us, taken out. I don't think he's going to be able to get Elon Musk or even Facebook or whoever to start censoring again. It's like they're desperate, and I actually think they're at least losing the conversation.
Well, I'll say
hopefully I'm right about.
No, I think you are right.
So.
I think you're right, but I don't think Mark Levin has a kill switch. I think Larry Ellison does. Like there are tiers to this shit.
Why he bought TikTok.
Well,
and I mean,
exactly.
well, they're trying. But doesn't it look to you guys? Okay, look. Look, there's obviously a lot of shit that we don't know, and we all speculate about this. Like, look, the truth is, and I'll be honest about this, right? Even everything the three of us know, we don't completely understand how the fuck Israel has so much goddamn control over this country. Like, what is it? Is it just the blackmail? Because come on, motherfucker. And even the blackmail.
Deeper than that.
Yes, I swear to God, I think it must be some type of spiritual force. Because, like, there's something about the fact that you have your leaders like go over and kiss their wall and
wearing
like tell you that the Tammy Bruce line, we're the greatest country ever. I mean, besides Israel. Like it's just these things that are like so bizarre, and we don't even completely understand exactly why everybody falls in line in the way that they do. Yeah, like this, right? Like
what is the perfect example, right? Of
yeah.
What happened, bro? Like,
So,
I can't even imagine blackmail.
And Dan
that.
Bongino with his, I mean, he went from being like pounding the he was basically like a Nick Fuentes character, and now he's like docile as a dove, dude. He's so fucking scared out of his mind. It's unbelievable.
Well, okay, so look, but at the same time, it's not exactly like, look, I know, and I said this on Rogan last time I was on, but I really feel confident saying this, that when people say Israel controls the U.S. government, I go, that's not exactly right either. Because I will tell you from everything I've read and everything I know, if there is one thing I'm sure of, if Netanyahu had full control of the U.S. government, we would have had regime change in Iran already. I guarantee that. I guarantee you the 12-day war ends in a regime change war in Iran if Netanyahu gets to call all the shots. Like and it doesn't matter if it took us 20 years and 500,000 troops to do it. He would gladly
make
sacrifice
more money that way. Way more money.
He would gladly sacrifice American lives and treasure to get them overthrown. Okay. So like there's a level to which the US government can stand up to him. Now,
barely.
Why they can only do to that level and not do a little bit more, why?
Charlie Kirk was a big part of that standing up, right?
Well, that's okay. So this is where it starts to get interesting, is when we actually start to figure out like, where is that level and what actually can we move? And I will say this, that I think the way that whole conversation has been moved, this wasn't part of their plan. Dude. And they're threatening and they're squirming and they're doing all this shit, but it's like, nah, dude, I don't actually know that they can control this. And a lot of these guys, we were saying earlier, how Josh Hammer might be a guy, but he doesn't even know the bigger picture. You know, he's just playing a little role. I think a lot of these guys like Mark Levin and Ben Shapiro, they're also that also. And but they think they're a big, important guy. So they're going, I'm going to, but no one's listening anymore.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to, I know we're getting late in the hours here, but I just wanted to say, you know, I'm getting some flack from usually the libertarians that fucking suck at life. So I'm not really worried about it, but you know, they're being critical of me because I am essentially defending Nick Fuentes. And I am I'm proudly and actively defending Nick Fuentes, and I'm going to continue to do so. I just wanted to make this point because I think it's an important one to make. Nick Fuentes, setting him aside, his audience matters tremendously. A bunch of young, intelligent, activated, politically intelligent, and like wanting to make a difference in this world, young men that haven't given up. There's so many fucking young men in this country that have completely given up.
A lot of young women too is like, honestly,
true.
are watching him too.
Of course, yes. Sorry, I don't want to leave all the women out.
Your point.
But yeah, exactly. Like, it's even more important than that. Like, if you don't see, and I know this sounds opportunistic, but if you don't see the opportunity when, you know, Dave and I have been in this for fucking ever. I've been a Ron Paulian since I was in high school. And it's just been like, I've been in the wilderness and I suddenly see an environment with like young, intelligent, activated young people that are like recognizing that they have been abused terribly by their government. And a lot of libertarians, instead of seeing that as an incredible opportunity for us to actually make positive, you know, advancement, they go, let's immediately distinguish ourselves from Nick Fuentes and say what a piece of shit this guy is. It's like, oh, you guys are just dedicated to losing into oblivion. Like, fuck you forever. Yeah. So I'm not going to do that.
Well, it's also and look, Clint, it's funny about this because, me and you were a part of like the Mises Caucus and the Libertarian Party, and this
We've been dealing with this
years
forever.
ago. So like 5 years ago, one of the biggest controversies from like the woke libertarians was that I had Nick Fuentes on my podcast, and they would always try to ask me about that. And there's this weird thing where I almost think it's like it really is like just being blue pilled versus red pilled. It's why that's a good analogy. Where you just go, I understand you just kind of take it as a given that these are where the lines of morality are. But like, why the fuck shouldn't, that was one of the things that was, we were talking about that, the chick that, Brett Cooper, saying that, like, that's the beautiful thing. What you want to have is almost like a thing like that, where like a sweet young girl who's not even taken like a provocative position just goes like, hey, if you're obviously more loyal to Israel than America, then like go to Israel, because that would be better for you. Like, there's why
She's
is
so
it
nice.
that is, there's so many things that
I'm like Randy Fine, get the fuck out of my country, and Brett Cooper's like, I think you'd just be happier there.
I guess I've always had a little bit. Look, I don't like I think one of the things that's going on with this, there's like these big rushes and floods and all these like changing things. There's a big flood and rush on, say, Twitter of people like shouting out the most goddamn Hitler loving anti-Jewish shit they could say, And this also really reinforces this fear that Jews have.
Exactly.
And it's a weird thing where, like Alex Berenson, who I kind of went out of my way to try to be nice to the other day. I'm not saying anything bad about him, but he tweeted at me at one point after we debated, and he wasn't happy with the response to that. But he went, people like Dave are the reason why my daughter's Jewish school needs armed security outside of the gates. And this is the thing, by the way, I know almost every Jewish person, as a Jew from New York City, I know a lot of Jewish people in New York City, and almost all of them talk about this. Yeah. There's armed security outside every synagogue and every Jewish school and all of this. Now, the thing that they won't tell you is that they just hired all of them.
Yeah, dude.
It's not.
I live in Miami. It's the same thing here. It's like it's a fucking armed fortress. There's no threats.
Now, look, I'll never tell anyone, just the nature of who I am, I'll never tell anyone they shouldn't have armed security outside where their kids are. You know what I mean? Like, I'm very secure about where my kids are. And also, it is true that there is a big rise in people who are pretty pissed off with Jews. So, like, I'm not even saying that, like, it's insane, but it's just a weird thing to, like, use that as, like, leverage. But then again, there are also this big rise of, like, people who are saying, and as all you guys know, it's this weird dynamic where it's like, I'm not talking about anything you ever say, Ian, or anything Nick ever says, or even anything Myron ever says, but I'm talking about, like, there's this big rise of the followers of a lot of you guys.
The random,
going,
like, faceless alt accounts that who
Hitler
knows what
was the
they are.
greatest guy ever, it turns out. And none, and like, there's, and look, I do
those
think
edits
that
do
there's
go hard, but I don't agree with them at all. Go ahead.
Well, I think there's a lot of humor mixed up in that too. But also, like, look, I don't think I just think it's wrong and kind of immature and kind of stupid. And I just don't like, actually, Hitler was really bad. Even, like, they're fucking it's like, read your best Holocaust denier, which I don't even know what that means. David Irving isn't even a Holocaust denier. He wrote the fucking book on Goebbels' diaries that show what a monster that guy is. Like, it's like, you are weirdly celebrating this brutal regime, which I don't even give a shit how many Jews you think were killed, which were quite a lot. But forget what you think about that. It was like the most fucked up, brutal regime. It's actually, as Daryl Cooper, who everyone tries to paint as the fucking, the Nazi sympathizer, as he would put it, it was a fucking paranoid, schizophrenic meth head who had a fucking entire nation hostage and just started fucking slaughtering people, like, indiscriminately. But look, forget the Jews, just the other people who he fucking slaughtered. Like, and so there's something poisonous about this. It is kind of like, oh, you're, like, becoming a devil worshiper in your own weird way because you're so fed up with how, it's like
reactionary cycles, right?
Yes, you're a part of, like, some crazy Christian cult where they're, like, raping the little kids, so you become a devil worshiper. Okay, you're right to be against them, but to actually go for, and I'm not saying Adolf Hitler was the devil, I'm saying he's the closest approximation for what you could find for the devil. There's a lot of negative shit coming out of all of that, but the springs are, like, bubbling up. Like, there's just a thing that's happening where it's like, all right, we're throwing off all the rules, all the templates of what you said was acceptable, because fuck you. We've seen what you think is acceptable, And so, like, I just think, like, that's kind of what's going on right now. But at the same time, I want to be part of people going, like, okay, yeah, I'm going to be as hardcore against that as possible. Also, while not pretending that Hitler was a great guy who, because it's just stupid.
The irony of that, though, is that accusing you, Dave, of being responsible for security guards being outside of, his daughter's school or whatever, it's actually the opposite. It's his own paranoia that feeds the alt-right. It's people like you that actually defuse it. And that's why I find so bizarre. And also, I just want to point out, too, the paranoid schizophrenic meth head that is Hitler is also the Zionists. I mean, the way they're behaving is
that's right.
I mean, I don't know if I'd say comparably murderous, but certainly comparably psychopathic, bombing Six Nations or whatever.
Spirit. It doesn't matter. This is the
well
thing
over
that
the
Tucker's
line.
right. This is the thing that Tucker Carlson was right about, that it's the same thing, and that's the whole point. And in a way, I think this is what libertarians have always been right about. That it's like it's like it's the same thing. The idea that you're going to say that any group has collective guilt or that you would, like, lose your humanity for any, and don't get me wrong, I make fucked up jokes and I made fucked up comments and all of that, but anytime you do that, not a joke, not something that's in the spirit of, like, making people, but anytime that you lose humanity for other people, that's when you've fallen into some dark spirit that you don't want to be a part of.
Well, I think that what that inevitably turns into is that when we're in these reactionary phases, when we're in these pole shifts, and you could look at the just right-left divide in America, the trick is how do you diffuse the tension as you let off all of the control mechanisms, right? Yeah. And I think the logic that needs to come into the other side of the public conversation is that if suppose you hate Jews, suppose you think that like the Jews are the ones running the world, you're fully in that camp. If you think logically about it and you take that worldview, if you give them an excuse to start this cycle over again, there's another Holocaust, we have to be fearful again, you're just continuing the cycle of giving Jews every reason to legitimately believe that everyone's going to come for them. And
it's the
need
entire
to
justification
not feed into
for killing all of these kids,
exactly.
which creates the hatred, which then actually jeopardizes them. It's like this incredibly vicious cycle that no matter how, because of being a straight white guy, like I can't say it without being accused of, because I look like Edward Norton in American History X. I'm definitely not the one to say it, which is why I like it when Dave says it, because it's like, all right, maybe it'll fucking actually make an impact.
Dave and Tucker said it perfectly on Tucker's show just a couple days ago, where you guys talked about the very legitimate fears of Jews that need to be taken seriously, even if you don't agree with the perspective of those fears. Like that's the thing, is that just because you think you're right, just because I think I'm right, that doesn't mean that the other person's emotional response to their perception of reality isn't legitimate and isn't going to have them acting from that perspective in the future.
No,
right?
That's right. And look, I mean, we all, whatever it sounds like, we're all being a bunch of homos here, but we all know on some level, right, that like that's the case. But also, and then this has to be, and it makes it easier when you say it like that to go like, but also that the fears and the concerns of like Christian white straight men matter too. And
Bingo.
That's been the big problem with all this shit. Like I've always just been a slave to consistency on this shit. Clint, me and you, we used to talk about this years ago, where the Libertarian Party, this is how, so we came in, we were doing our little thing in the Libertarian Party for a little bit. And it was kind of like, as me and Clint were really getting our like, our name up and growing and stuff, but we were also, it wasn't like we were also just doing podcasts talking about this shit, but then we were a part of this Mises Caucus project. Mm-hmm. And I used to say, like, a lot of these libertarians, and some of them were like, we came out of kind of like the paleo libertarian, Ron Paul, Pat Buchanan, like that kind of school, Lou Rockwell style, and they came out of kind of like, a lot of this more left-wing libertarian stuff. And they would go, hey, we're against racism because that's collectivism, and we find it repugnant and outrageous to believe in bigotry or whatever. And we'd be like, yeah, okay, cool. How about all this anti-white racism that's going on in college campuses? And then they'd like lose the circuit. We'd be like, wait, hold on. Let's just be consistent about this. Yeah. Like, okay,
they'd be like, what are you, a fucking white nationalist?
Yeah,
like,
right.
It's like, no, actually, I'm just applying this equally.
Yeah, like if you're against collectivism, then what's with this white fragility book that I see is on the New York Times bestsellers list and all this stuff? So like it would be like, I always kind of feel the same way, where it's like, well, look, I don't think it's right to have collective guilt about any race, but at the same time, especially if you're in a Western, if you're in Western civilization, like, to have that bigotry about like white Christian men is like, hey, you're kind of living in the society they created. Yeah. So like, if you're happy here, then like that should be the last group you're allowed to have bigotry against. And at some point we accepted that that's the only group you're allowed to have bigotry against.
And it's so
and
much,
that's nutty.
It
makes
so much
no
more
sense.
It's so much more dangerous than that too, because white men in particular, but white people broadly in America, had been basically bred to be totally race blind. Like myself personally, I was like, I have zero, like I am James Lindsay's ideal. I was like, I'm a perfectly, docile, don't see anything. I'm purely an individualist. I don't judge anybody based off their immutable characteristics. And then I spent a dozen years being told that I'm the devil because I'm a straight white guy. And it's like even as a individualist libertarian, that still had an impact on me. I still suddenly started to have like a thought about my race and my gender and my whatever, my religion or whatever.
Yeah, well, let me tell you something. And this is a very small group to be a part of, but as a real Israel-hating Jew, I was completely considered a white guy in the woke movement, and then I'm considered a Jew by the fucking right-wing fucking movement that's identitarian, and then I'm considered a self-hating Jew by the fucking Zionists in this whole movement. But also,
I still take a view as a white guy if it helps.
Dude, I'm trying so hard. But again, like, look, all of this, again, like, and this is where I think there's not nothing to race. There's not nothing to all of this. Like, there is something to it. It's not a complete coincidence that Europe is the way Europe is, and Africa is the way Africa is, and Asia is the way Asia is. Like, we are different, and there's nothing wrong with like acknowledging that. But also, we have to figure out what we're doing now going forward.
Yep.
You know, and that's the big question here. Because
what's the ideal?
Well, I tried to get at this when I had Nick on my podcast, and it's kind of interesting. And in a way also, you know, like when I was saying we should keep the lines of communication open, I think there would be something really interesting about like a follow-up podcast with me and Nick, or a follow-up podcast with Tucker and Nick, because there was something about like the first one. Because, you know, me and Nick, he had been talking shit about me. And then with him and Tucker, like they had both been talking crazy shit. So there was this thing where it was like, hey, how's this going to go? No one exactly trusts the other one. And we should get into some of this stuff more. But one of the things I tried to get into, and I felt like he didn't really want to argue. And I get that. He was also on my turf and on Tucker's turf. But like, I was like, well, hey, look, we can't go back to 1965 and undo the fucking Immigration Act, right? So what do we do now? Because that was the thing that I always thought was missing from like the alt-right, you know, prescription. Like, well, okay, you want a white ethno state. Okay, but what?
Yeah, how?
So then. And so in a way, you know, you go like, well, okay, well, we're going to have to find a way that we can all relate to each other. And that we can all find like kind of and it seems to me that this is where I think libertarianism is kind of the only way forward. I mean, even if like once we get past all these legitimate criticisms of Israel, and even all the legitimate criticisms of Jewish identity that connects you to supporting Israel, or all the legitimate criticisms of black crime or black identity or Latino identity or white identity, okay, but what next? Right. And this is where I think libertarians ultimately have the answer. You know, what are we going to do? Is it really going to be, you could say me and Clint, I don't really know enough about your actual politics, Ian, but me and Clint have probably both talked about like anarcho-capitalism and a world where there's like almost no government and no, okay, that's probably never going to happen. Nick Fuentes, what he's talking about, Catholic theocracy. You think that's going to happen in the United States of America?
Yeah,
you're not even the Christian majority. You're the tiny Christian minority. What if even if there was going to be a Christian theocracy, it would be a Christian Zionist theocracy before it was a Nick Fuentes Catholic, Mexican Catholic fucking theocracy. Like, I don't even, like, how much do you have to slice the groups up before you can get to a Catholic theocracy, white supremacist that also accepts part Mexicans? You know, like, I'm just, again, I'm not, I know I'm caricaturing.
He's almost as much of a minority as the libertarians are.
But I'm just saying, like, so how now at a certain point, trolling the fucking libtards is awesome. Fucking enraging Ben Shapiro is awesome. But at a certain point, if we're actually taking over as the mainstream, where do we go from here? And I would humbly,
right?
Well, I would humbly submit that the only way to go forward is that we respect the rights of other people as individuals. And
slow down, Dave. That is whoa, dude.
Well, you've been reading Mein Kampf or what?
Well, I would say that, look, the Declaration of Independence and the Bill of Rights of the Constitution is not perfect, but man, is it really, really good. Yep. It's still really, really good today. Yep. And that we would just go, and then in a cultural sense, we would just go, hey, why don't we just, seeing as how the Civil Rights Act wasn't 10 years ago or 20 years ago, it was 60 years ago, then seeing as how Jews are 2% of the population and are like one of the most successful groups, and seeing as how all this shit, how about we just culturally say the rules are we're all equals and no group is precious, no group is less than any other group. Yeah. We can all question and make fun. If Ben Shapiro can go, blacks are 13% of the population and 50 something percent of the criminals, then someone else can go, Jews are 2% of the population and 80% of the mainstream media pundits or owners or whatever. And we could all just go, all right, let's talk about that.
Yep.
And hopefully make some jokes about it and laugh about it and just be people about it, right?
That would be great.
Not take it so damn seriously.
It's not the best way to go forward.
It's the only way.
The only way to go forward.
Bingo.
The only way to go forward is to go, we're going to deal with each other as individuals, as equals, as people. And that will not be satisfying to so many people. That will not be satisfying to the hardcore right-wingers who are like, no, fuck that shit. Dave's a subversive Jew who's just trying to convince you to not hate Jews. That will not be satisfactory to the Zionists who go, no, Tucker Carlson's Hitler. That's
Nor
fine.
the left. Like the left will lose it. Everyone getting handouts might lose it.
But all I'm saying is that is the hill that I'll die on.
Yep.
That's what I'm for.
with you. And
I would argue that a lot of America's in that same kind of middle, even though it seems different on Twitter.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I agree. I think half the people on Twitter saying the worst shit would actually agree with that.
I think
they're almost saying the worst shit because they want to get back at the other guy saying the worst shit.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And there's a lot of resentment and hatred that's been built up, particularly by young white men who have been abused. And it's like, so now we're going to ask the young white men who have been abused for their entire childhood, essentially, to now be the bigger person and forgive the slights and go back to an individualist mindset. And that's not an easy ask. So this is actually the one part where, like, normally I like having Dave be the messenger for us, especially when it comes to anti-Zionist messaging, because it coming from a Jewish person is much easier. Well, I'll tell you what, Dave, this is a time where Clint Russell actually serves a role. Having me push back against Nick Fuentes, being a straight white man, may be more productive than you pushing back against Nick Fuentes.
There you go. So
I just want to once again offer Nick Fuentes that opportunity. If you would like to have a conversation with me, I know I'm too small time, but maybe after this conversation with these two juggernauts, it may change.
That'd be an interesting conversation.
Yeah, it would be a really interesting conversation, and I think that.
I recommend it, Nick, if you're listening.
Yeah, I'm an honest actor who's genuinely interested in putting this country first, Americans first, sincerely. It's my passion. It's all I care about. I could be making a lot more money doing a lot of other things, and I'm not, because I love this, and I'm serious about it. So, and I think Nick is too. I know these two guys are. A handful of others in this world are for real, legitimate actors, and everybody else is fucking bought and compromised, and they're all pieces of fucking shit. So, sorry, I'm just telling the truth. I hope that happens. We'll see.
Yeah. I think that it's important for us all to remember and remind ourselves every day that the internet is a fucked up place. It lets us do a lot of amazing things. It lets us connect in a lot of amazing ways. But the internet is designed to make people hate each other. And just the impersonal nature of it is you just will naturally be more defensive, more aggressive, more tribal, more ready to say bombastic shit, more ready to try to get your winning number of likes and shit. And like, cool, whatever. That's a fun video game, but it's a video game. Yeah. And it's important that we all remember in America that like go to the grocery store and look around for the evil people. Where's all the evil people, right? Where's in the movie theater? Or, there's no one in the movie theater because they're fucking going bankrupt. But you know what I mean?
Rogan makes that point all the time.
Also just that, and also just that, there are these people like, say, the James Lindsays of the world who they're trying to go, well, look, come on, we have this huge opportunity to do this MAGA thing, but you guys are picking all these weird issues and now it's going to ruin everything. And it's like, I really loved that Tucker said this when he was on my show the other day. And the truth is that even if those guys are right when they're saying, hey, there's some takes that the wildest guys on Twitter have that just, your regular person who doesn't pay attention to any of this shit would be like, what the fuck? Look, there's a pretty strong consensus amongst the American voting electorate that we don't like Adolf Hitler or Joseph Stalin. That is pretty solid built in there. And if you go, hey, someone said something nice about either one of them, you'd be like, that's probably going to turn people off. Yeah. But also, you're like, hey, James Lindsay, the whole shit you've married yourself to is also turning a bunch of people off. The idea that we're supposed to support Israel's destruction of Gaza, or that we're fine with the Epstein cover up, or any of this stuff. So the thing that Tucker said, which I think is really important for all of us to pay attention to, shit post online as much as you want to, troll all these people, all that. But let's also keep in mind that, like, hey, we actually are in a different position now. And that's something that I think all of us, and one of the things that I appreciate about Nick Fuentes was that I think he is grappling with that, especially in the wake of Charlie Kirk's death. He's grappling with the fact that, like, whoa, I'm in a big position now of influence. And while we are in this position, let's keep in mind what Tucker said. If we really are just pushing the very basic America first stuff, like if we just said, hey, let's just say the deal is this. You believe we shouldn't fund foreign wars of choice and be engaged in permanent militarism and permanent foreign conflict, and that we shouldn't have trillion-dollar Pentagon budgets. What? We can blow up the world 70,000 times already. We don't really need to spend $1 trillion a year on defense. We're fine. Let's if you don't believe in that, and you don't believe in, like, say, the idea that we should have an open border where anybody, like, closed borders or something approximating a reasonable immigration policy, not fighting wars of choice, not spending ourselves into debt. Look, just what our tax revenue brings in every year. We're the biggest government in the world. We don't have to go into debt to have a lot of government services. Okay. Yeah. Let's just say we're not going to go further into debt. We're not going to continue to debase our currency. We're not going to have open borders, and we're not going to fight wars permanently that we are just wars of choice. Just that. You could get super duper majorities of the American people to support. Basic things like everyone should just be loyal to this country. If you express any loyalty to another country, you can't hold political power. You can be a citizen with all rights and everything like that, but you can't hold political power. You can't hold, these very simple things. If we just list those out right now, we win. We're in Deal or No Deal where they're offering you $600,000, and you got a shot to either win $1 million or go home with nothing. Take the $600,000, man. This is a great day. We could take that deal if we all of us decided to take that deal right now. In fact, let's draw up a goddamn fucking agreement that all of us agree on, that every goddamn fucking influencer agrees on. I swear to God, if we just made it those things I was listing, I'll fucking do everything I can to get Rogan and Tucker and Candace and everyone on board. If we just drove that, we win.
Declaration of Independence.
Yeah, the
Something
Declaration of
that.
America First.
Yeah. Dude, look, I completely...
Declaration of the woke right.
Well, now no one's going to sign on.
Individualist woke right declaration.
Yeah. Now no one's going to sign on. Well, look, I agree, and this is why I keep saying that I'm going to defend Nick Fuentes, because I think that's at its core. If you set aside the shit posting, the vast majority of their demands, his audience's demands, are that. That's what they are so upset about. Yeah, and it's a good start. Yeah, I'm sure there's going to be disagreements. And for the record, I'm not trying to fucking get Fuentes' audience. I think they're going to hate me as soon as they realize I'm a libertarian and I don't believe in throwing people in prison for the rest of their lives for drug use. They're going to think I'm a total queer. So that's fine. I'm not trying to trick them or anything like that.
Right, you are a Jewish subversive.
That's right, exactly.
They will figure it out eventually.
But I'm just saying, I see in them so many similarities. The same way I defend MTG. I don't like a lot of her economics and some of her other policies I don't really agree with at all. But I see in her a sincere fighter for the America First cause. Thomas Massey I don't disagree with on basically anything, and I see in him. So I'm going to go to the mat for him. It's that is the distinction we need to make, in my opinion.
Well, yeah, I think you're right, and I think that we look, Nick Fuentes is here. It's not any of our decisions. He's here. It's not like a fucking, I'll allow Nick to have another conversation with me. It's fucking, I hope I can get that conversation. I don't know. It just is what it is. I'm not, I just can't pretend it's something other than what it is. Sorry, it's my commitment to tell him the truth. And so that's just that. We should have more conversations. Obviously, that's the better path. But also, it's not just a matter of whatever politicians we think we agree with on everything. It's also, look, this whole fight is over what happens after Trump. One of the reasons I brought up earlier, I don't know, we've been going for a while, but when I was brought up the Steven Crowder thing and how much his fan base was against him on the just defend Donald Trump thing, it's like, look, dude, Donald Trump's going to go. So what's next? That's what this fight's all about, right? What's next? And I'll tell you, I saw two things Fuentes did. One that I really hated and one that I really loved. And one of the things he did was he had a segment on his show where he said, anyone born in America who's America first, you're with me. And he goes, I don't care whether you're my enemy or whatever you've said about me in the past. If you're for America first, if we're on board with this program, you're with me. I thought that was amazing. And there was another thing that I saw he did where he said that J.D. Vance, he laid down an ultimatum. And he said, if you criticize the Groypers or criticize anti-Semitism, I will have 10,000 people in Iowa. And I was like, well, that's not the way to do it, man. Like, you shouldn't make the ultimatum about you or the Groypers or even anti-Semitism. Because, come on, look, as big as Nick is now, no one's going to win the presidency, especially if they're opposing Israel, without at least saying, no, I don't hate Jews. I'm not for anti-Semitism. And no one's going to be able to not distance themselves from Nick's wildest takes. But I think if he really wants to be powerful, there's a way to do that where it's not, the ultimatum isn't about that. The ultimatum is about being America first or being Israel first. Right. Now, what I thought, I saw this, I'll tell you guys this, and I saw this and I sent it to Tucker and I just texted Tucker like furious, even though it has nothing to do with him. But Tucker's the closest person I know to JD Vance. So if JD Vance does something wrong, I just text Tucker like, what the fuck is JD Vance doing? And then Tucker goes, I completely agree with you, Dave. And I go, yeah, but fuck this, dude. Blah, blah, blah. But I don't know if you saw, I think it was at the Turning Point event where he was just trashing Thomas Massey.
Oh, yeah. I covered it.
And he goes, you guys saw this? He goes on this whole thing where he goes, well, Thomas Massey never votes with Donald Trump whenever we need him. And not just sometimes, but he never votes for Donald Trump. And blah, blah, blah. You're like, bullshit. Oh, so he doesn't compromise his principles sometimes. He never compromises them at all. That's your, and then he goes, look, politics is politics. And my immediate thought was, that's right. Politics is politics. And when I go on every goddamn big show in this country and tell people not to vote for you, I guess that'll be politics, motherfucker. Bingo. Right? Like there has to be a line that we set here where we go, look, the big battle is coming up in 2028. And now Nick could move that needle almost unlike anybody else could right now. And it's up to him to decide what that is going to be. But I certainly say it should be something. It should be something where we go, look, whoever we're going to get behind, you will get this entire army. And it would be great if we could all be together, that you get fucking all of our army, Nick's army, Candace, Tucker, Rogan, Theo Vaughn, Andrew Schultz, like all these people's armies. If you only just agree to this most reasonable of requests, which is that we govern our government on what's best on the behalf of the American people, that it's not about this foreign country that fucking, or any of them to be, because it's not just one, there's one in particular, but any of them, right? So
for a start, right? We'll get to the corporations and the bank. We'll get to all of them next.
There's a lot of things to get to, but if we could just set like a few reasonable things. Agreed. So anyway, I'm not even saying that's like what the final plan should look like, but we should all start thinking about that. What can we do with this new opportunity that we have?
Honestly, Dave, that's the kind of leadership we need in this country. Is people like in your position that have the experience and the acumen saying that kind of thing to get the conversation going. Because now that the Overton window is open, now the conversation is had, and we got a couple of years to figure it out. And you're exactly right that that collectively the audiences of all these people having these conversations is like the vast majority of America.
It is, but I will say, we control the dialogue. Like the real like cutting edge of the conversation is like that's what our whole world is all about. That's really where we run shit at this point. But we do not have institutional power. We've got basically none. And Donald Trump appears to be completely compromised. JD Vance is still unknown. I mean, if you're being nice, he's unknown. We don't know for sure. So my concern over the next 2 years, aside from everything else, World War III and fucking economic meltdown, and I've got so many fucking concerns, and more political assassinations. I have so many concerns. But my biggest concern, aside from all that, is can we actually legitimately take the power that we have in terms of the conversation that's being had on the cutting edge and actually fucking save this country? And if we can't, well, at least we tried. But if we are just in this to build our names, our audience, our likes, our clicks, whatever, I think we will ultimately end up devouring ourselves and not accomplish anything. And I hope, and I see in Nick a sincerity that makes me think perhaps he is seriously committed to creating a better country. And if he is, he's got an immense power to help right now. And I hope he will. So that's my olive branch to his audience and to everybody else that fucking hates me right now because I've been backing Fuentes. I just want you to understand, I am dedicated to trying to fucking create a better country and a better world, moreover, but most specifically because I am realistic, can I actually have a country that I can raise my children in that is at least somewhat reflective of the country I grew up in? And at this junction, the answer is fuck no. I'm out of my mind to even think that I can, but we do have the capacity to change things. And especially you, Dave, I mean, given the connections you've got, all these people, I mean, this is the entire internet, essentially. like all the conversations that matter, you've been a part of. And I have a lot of hope, but I think it's going to require us to all grow up a little bit. And I'm not talking down to anybody. I'm just saying like we need to recognize we're not just upstarts. I am more of an upstart than you guys are, but like we're not just upstarts. Like we have power.
And look, and the growing up thing isn't just for Fuentes. Believe me, that's for me too. And I'm fucking 42 and I got a wife and kids and shit. But I gotta, it's that's one of the things that's pretty funny. It's like I don't know if you saw a lot of people, which I think is so great. One of the really interesting dynamics of the last week. I'm sure both of you guys have seen this, but so they had this literally genocide 2025 conference where all of them are calling for fucking genocide and then going, I'm so outraged about these guys. And then it was like, it's not like we've been doing this for a while now, but it was almost like such low hanging fruit. You're like, I think we'll just go on the offensive here and go, you should be canceled. That's horrible, and so you just almost see this dynamic where you're like, wait, no, you're fucked up. But even in all of that, the point is that everybody should fucking grow up. It's not, and like I felt this way when I had that debate with Alex Berenson. I'm like embarrassed about that, even though
it was funny though.
It was fun, but like there is a certain point where you go like, look, man, we do have to figure this out, and we do have to recognize that like we should all be a little bit better. I know, I just know this is a person all the time. I know this is just like part of my life. Like that I'll be out with my wife and kids somewhere and someone will say something and I'll be kind of pissed off and my wife will be like, come on, can we? And I'll go, yes, okay. All right, let me let it go and move on. Like that's life. We should all try to be a little bit better every day. And we all, in our own worlds probably are trying to do that. But yeah, look, there is something when you're leading an insurgency, it is a different thing than when you take over the capital city.
Right.
Yep. And we are in a position where we've, at least in some metaphorical dimension, we've kind of done that. Yep. This is not a joke. This is a real thing. This is like the United States of America's core of media influence. And all of us are actually very involved in that world. And that is something that is a tremendous, it's amazing and it's a great opportunity, but there is a responsibility that comes with that, and all of us should think about that, myself as much as anybody else.
Yep.
Yeah.
I completely
100%.
agree. Well, I love you guys. I really appreciate all the efforts that you guys are putting in. I think between the three of us, we make one hell of a cogent conspiratorial argument about about a lot of crazy shit in the world. So that's why I really appreciate the opportunity to have this conversation with you guys. I mean, I'm going to drop your links down below, but if you guys want to do any plugs, please feel free.
My name's Ian Carroll, and you can follow me on YouTube at Ian Carroll Show. Real honor to be here with both of you guys. For real.
Sure, man.
Appreciate it.
I really enjoyed this. I'm sorry if I talked for too much of the time, but I really enjoyed this, guys. Let's do it again with all three of us.
Yeah, dude. And next time, Fuentes, you're welcome to join us and fucking break the internet. I think this is already going to break the internet. So if he decides it's necessary to get in the fray with us, I think it's going to go fucking super ballistic. But defend our country, our culture, our community, whatever you want to call it, Constitution. I'm just thrilled that we are making a difference, and I think that the best is yet to come, and let's make sure we get justice for Charlie Kirk while we're at it. If you guys want to follow me, I am Clint Russell, Liberty Lockdown, and make sure you hit the subscribe button, like, comment down below. Shout out to Ian Carroll, fucking constantly shouting me out. I've got so many new followers thanks to you, dude, so appreciate you. Dave did it a couple weeks ago. Man. Yeah, it's amazing. I've never had this many views over the past month, and I feel like I'm
you're the man, Clint. Well deserved, dude. You've been doing. Clint's been one of the best guys in this space for a while now, man. For at least the last 5 years, there's been nobody who's been any better than Clint on all the most important issues, dude. And I've been saying, because I've known you for a while now, dude. Whether it's the lockdowns, the vaccine, Russiagate, the Ukraine war, Gaza, Clint's been on top of all the most important issues and been just great at breaking them down. And I will say one of the few shows that I like always watch is Liberty Lockdown.
Well, that's gonna be the new plug at the end of every episode of my show. So thank you, man.
They paid me $100,000 to say that. I didn't mean a word of it. I never heard of Clint before tonight. First time I met him.
I'm going to cut that part of the episode. So you're fucked, Dave. Anyways, yeah, thank you guys. And please do hit the subscribe button. Leave a comment down below. We said a lot that's probably controversial. I'd love to hear from you guys. And we'll catch you next time. Peace.